I'm calling to order tonight's meeting of the Zoning Adjustments Board, April 27th. We have not a lot of items on the agenda, but a couple of them are going to be well attended by a number of folks. So after we get through roll call and public comment, we may want to reorder the agenda so that items with fewer speakers can be attended to earlier in the evening. So staff, do you want to call the roll and ask for ex parte communication?
Yes, thank you. Board Member Teresa Clark.
Here, no ex parte.
Board Member Sheehan.
Here, no ex parte.
Board Member Solosky.
Present. I did get a voicemail from Rena Rickles, but I didn't respond, and there was no conversation. So I take that as no ex parte.
No, but also, could you? I'm not familiar with what project she's associated with.
Yes, Campus Drive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board Member O'Keefe.
Present, no ex parte.
Board Member Khan.
Present, no ex parte.
Okay, here you go.
And I see that Board Member Brazil Clark is not yet present. Board Member Carrie Olson.
Present, no ex parte.
Board Member Simon Weisberg.
Present, no ex parte.
And Vice Chair Pinkston.
Present, no ex parte, although I did also receive a voicemail from Rena Rickles. I didn't speak to her or get a message of substance regarding, I imagine it's Campus Drive since that's what John said it was.
Thank you.
All right. So we have one public comment on a non-agended item. Is there anything else, staff, you want to talk to us about before we go ahead and do public comment?
There are no announcements from staff.
Okay. All right, so my one and only speaker for public comment is Chris Oakes.
Hello. Really quick, I was just wondering, some members of the public were wondering when the public comments are going to be released for 1900 4th Street. Maybe that's a Shannon Allen question.
What do you mean by when the public comments will be released?
The public comments that were submitted over the past several months for the proposed development for the DEIR. When do we get to see those as the public?
Well, they are available for public review anytime that you would like. They are part of the public record. So there's 800 comment letters. If anyone would like to schedule an appointment to bring in a thumb drive and have those letters downloaded, if they would like copies made, I believe the city charges 10 cents a page.
Are you going to upload them to the website?
I'm not intending to.
Can you?
I can look into that request and see.
Because people have been checking it because they thought, because other comments were being put up there, that they thought that's where they would be.
Well, this is the first request that I've heard for that, or maybe it's the second request that I've heard for that, and was then able to provide those comment letters on a thumb drive. Okay. So I hear your request now in this public forum.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so for tonight's agenda, we have two items on the consent calendar, but we do have some comment cards on item number 3, Spruce Street, so I'm going to pull that one and put it on the action calendar. We have a number of cards for items 3 and 4 this evening, and just a few for item number 5, 1446 Campus. Since there's only 3 public speakers on the campus item, which is item number 5, I'd like to take that item first so that we can try and help folks get out of here early and they don't have to sit through other items, if that's okay with you, ZAB. All right, in that case, we will proceed immediately to item 5, 1446 Campus Drive. I'm sorry. Thank you. So we do. We have one item on the consent calendar. So we'll remove item 3. We'll move item 5 to be the first action item, and then the consent calendar includes the minutes and the 2019 Emerson Street item.
Could I make a motion regarding consent for Emerson?
Thank you.
That it be heard.
Is there a second? You want that to be heard?
You want to pull that? You mean?
Yes.
You do. Okay.
Can I ask why?
Because it's an expansion of a non-conforming building.
Okay. In that case, the consent calendar consists of the minutes. Is there a
So
motion?
I will move the minutes of March 23rd and April 13th, unless we want to separate them, but I'll move them both.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Okay. And I should probably be recorded as an abstention for the meeting I didn't attend, which was April 13th, but I can be approval on the March 23rd.
And likewise for me.
All right, so I think what we should do is take 2019 Emerson Street first, since we don't have comment cards on it, but you had a concern, and then we can move into the hearing.
Yes. Well, while this appears to be, a relatively minor item and minor request, it is an expansion, internal expansion of a non-conforming use in terms of the number of bedrooms. So I felt that shouldn't go unremarked, and it is what's certainly an established trend to pack additional bedrooms into almost any available space within existing buildings. And in this case, what's called a study or common area for the unit, which I believe is 4 bedrooms now, is being lost to another bedroom. So that tends to be the direction of these kinds of projects, is to increase the number of bedrooms and decrease the common living space for the unit. And in principle, I think that's an unhealthy trend, and I object to this project on that basis, but it is a relatively minor one.
Okay. Is there a staff report on this? Thank you for stating your concern.
Yes, briefly, good evening, ZAB members. The application is for a use permit to convert the study room into an additional bedroom. The property consists of triplex of 3 condominiums. The ground level is owned by one party, and the upper levels are owned by the applicant. The study room is currently being used as a bedroom, and it came to city's attention as a code enforcement, and they have decided to, rather than restore it or make it a study room, they have decided to install a closet to make it a bedroom. And it's R2A allows these types of uses or conversion of study rooms into bedrooms with a use permit, and therefore we recommend that it be approved.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Can you please come forward and make a brief statement? You have up to 5 minutes. And if
Okay, so what we're proposing is our condo is actually a block away from the Ashby BART, and as you know that housing is in demand in the Bay Area, and especially housing near transit. And our condominium is actually the bedrooms, as even a 5th bedroom has the common space has more than 50% of the general area. I don't know if you saw the pictures that I provided. If you look at the condo, it's a very generous space. It has sort of a cathedral ceiling. The common space are very generous space, and we feel that adding a bedroom does not compromise the common great room, the common space that the tenants would have. We're providing quality space, quality housing for very near transit, near Berkeley Bowl.
thank you. Are there questions of the applicant?
I do. These are it's a rental?
It's a rental right now, yeah. When we built it, it was for our family, yes.
And the tenant who's been living there will continue to live there?
Yes.
Other questions?
Yes. Are there multiple leases for the bedrooms, or is it a single lease?
One
so
lease.
A master lease.
Yes.
And then is...
For the condo upstairs, yes. For one condo.
But they're unrelated individuals?
No, they're very much friends. They are.
Well, I know friends, but unrelated. Yeah, okay.
They're young professionals. Yeah.
Okay.
I did want to comment that the open space is actually quite appealing and beautifully done.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, bringing it back to the ZAB for discussion and a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this. I think it is actually a great idea to increase the number of bedrooms within the unit, as long as there's plenty of place to have your kitchen and dining room and living room. So I think it's a great idea, and I would encourage that, actually. So I would like to make a motion to approve it.
Okay.
I can second. I generally, I share Patrick's concern about, common use space, common space, and livability, but the applicant has satisfied my concerns, so I'm willing to vote for this.
Okay.
To approve it, that is.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wilson.
I served on design review for a long time, so this is a pet peeve of mine. I am not going to approve things unless I actually get their dimensions on them, so I know what size the bedrooms are. And I can see there's a smaller bedroom in this unit, but I really would like to know what that smaller dimension is going to be on those two rooms. So that's something just for staff for the future. It's a small thing to ask.
I believe I have dimensions in the floor plans.
On the plans.
Yeah, on sheet A3.
I see that it's 20 feet, but honestly, it's really hard to see 20.8, whatever. I just want it in the plans.
I also share that. I looked for dimensions specifically for the bedroom size, and I would suggest that, especially for a bedroom, noting the internal dimensions of the room is very helpful.
It's very important, and that's my 14 years on design review.
Absolutely, and I appreciate the overarching comment. I can just, related to this project, the study that's being converted into a bedroom is approximately 9 feet 9 inches by 13 feet 11 inches. The bedroom just to the north of that is also 9 feet 9 inches, also 13 feet 11 inches.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Just a question for Patrick. Is the non-conforming aspect of this the fact that there was someone sleeping in the study, or is there something else that was non-conforming that you're aware of?
I don't know. Maybe staff can better answer that. I just recall the note that it was a non-conforming use.
Okay.
And didn't really dig into the reasons.
Okay, I'll presume that was because it was being used as a study. The study was being used as a bedroom.
Correct.
Okay.
There has a non-conforming setback on a property, on a side yard setback, but
Okay.
the addition is on the side that conforms.
Okay. And that's the only non-conformance?
Yes.
Is the side yard setback?
Mhm.
Okay, so it's not size or unit count or bedroom count, okay.
Thanks.
Okay, further discussion? All right, we have a motion, it's been seconded. All those in favor of the motion, well, maybe we'd better do roll call since there's some dissent. Staff, would you do a roll call vote?
Thank you. Board Member Clark?
Yes.
Board Member Sheehan?
Yes.
Board Member Solosky?
Yes.
Board Member O'Keefe?
Yes.
Board Member Khan?
Yes.
Board Member Olson?
Abstain?
Board Member Simon Weisberg?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Pinkston?
Yes. Congratulations, you have your permit.
Thank you.
All right, so the next item we'll take up will be 1446 Campus, and then we'll follow that with 1734 Spruce and 1615 Martin Luther King. Is there a staff report on 1446 Campus?
Yes, just a moment, please.
Denise, is that based on the number of cards you got?
Yeah, I've only got 4 cards for the campus item. The other 2 are nice, healthy stack.
So the Spruce Street one has a lot, you said?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Good evening, Vice Chair Pinkston and members of the ZAB. 1446 Campus is a request for a use permit to construct an approximately 4,200 square foot single-family dwelling, an attached 400 square foot garage with an average building height of 33 feet and 2 inches, and a reduced front yard setback on a lot approximately 6,400 square feet, a vacant lot. This property is located in the R1H, the single-family residential hillside overlay zoning district. As described in the project description, there is a request for a use permit to construct the dwelling, as well as administrative use permits for the reduction of the front yard setback and to exceed the average building height. The proposed dwelling use is surrounded by similar single-family residential uses and is designed to step down to follow the existing terrain. It would appear as a single-story building from Campus Drive. Although the dwelling is 3 stories high, the building mass is staggered to follow the existing topography. The street section and street strip elevations in the plans show the height of adjacent dwellings as well as the proposed project. The reduced setback is intended to provide access to the property via driveway and include the parking garage structure such that grading and excavation is minimized on site and the entrance to the dwelling is provided directly from the street. Because of the project's consistency with the zoning ordinance and the general plan and the minimal impact on surrounding properties as conditioned, staff recommends that the ZAB approve the use permit. The following slide shows the development standards. For the ZAB's reference. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions of staff?
So I have the same question we had, that I had 2 weeks ago on the other project. It was very similar to this. The average height. So you have calculated the average height based on the average, where the average slope is. Do you have a diagram of that?
We have a diagram in the plans. The elevation on page A3.2 notes the average grade.
Can you bring that up on the screen?
So you'll see the average grade is on the right noted. And subsequently, the average height is noted. So that's using the highest and lowest points of the grade. The average is calculated.
Teresa, could you use your mic so we can...
So you took where the building starts, you took the average grade from where the building starts or from the property line?
From where the building starts.
From where the building starts, okay.
Correct.
And so, and that's the one that's 3 foot, 3 inches from the property line?
Well, so the lowest grade is the rear of the property because the property slopes downwards from the front. So the 3 foot, that would be the highest grade, where the setback is, if that's what you're referencing.
Oh, no, I was thinking the front yard setback.
Oh, the front yard setback would be noted on the site plan, which would be...
But isn't the building pushed forward?
Correct.
Okay, into the setback? And how far is it from the property line?
In the front?
I thought it was 3 feet or something back
Correct.
from the property line. Okay, so
Yes.
that's where you took the average grade.
That's used in the calculation of average grade.
Okay. And then how did you get the average height?
So the average height is done using the average grade and taking the lowest and highest points of the building.
Oh, okay. I thought before it was another, Greg had said something different last time, so I wasn't clear on how he had calculated. So you're taking the highest point and the
Yes.
lowest point of the highest. Okay. Thank you.
I have a follow-on question. So although the setback to the front property line is small. It appears that the setback to the public right up to the street edge is much more conventional for a driveway length. Can you tell me what that dimension is, the length of the driveway from the garage face to the edge of the street pavement? I don't see a scale on here that I can easily use.
I don't believe I have that dimension, but perhaps the applicant's team can discuss that further.
Okay, so when the applicant comes forward, can you let us know what that driveway length is? Okay. Other questions of staff? Seeing none, let's go ahead and open the hearing. So I have 5 cards. Actually, we begin with the applicant. If the applicant could come forward, talk to us about driveway setback, and go through any other issues you want to raise with the ZAB plans.
Good evening, everyone. So just to start, the short side of the driveway is 20 feet, and the long side of the driveway is 25 feet. I wrote a little introduction for the first 5 minutes, and I'm addressing some of those things in the first 5 minutes, so I can get started with that.
Please do.
And then if we have questions, the architect's also here to answer some of the more technical questions. So I'd like to introduce myself and the project. I'm Greg Ford. I was born in Berkeley at Alta Bates and graduated from Berkeley High. My father's a licensed general contractor. He owns the lot. He's been working in Berkeley for the last 40 years. He's retrofitted thousands of homes in Berkeley, including 2 on Campus Drive, 2 of the neighboring homes. Unfortunately, he's facing some very serious health issues, and this is one of his last projects, is to build me this house to live in and to raise a family in. My parents are actually in the process of selling their family home and splitting the time between my sister's house in Petaluma with my 2 nieces and this house here in Berkeley. In designing the home, it was important to have enough room for children as well as the grandparents who plan to spend a significant amount of time at the house. Although all of those factors were important, all that I just mentioned, the main focus in designing this house was building a house that would fit well into the existing neighborhood. We aimed to protect views, privacy, and provide safe and usable parking. We strategically followed the pattern of how all the houses on the hillside were built, a garage located on top, and the house stepped down. We actually stepped the house down a full story and a half. We've worked closely with the neighbors, particularly Rick and Rebecca, the neighbors directly to the north, and have already made significant changes to the original plans to address their concerns. From letters they submitted yesterday, it seems they're still a little bit unhappy with the design, mainly due to the size. One of Rick and Rebecca's other concerns was the natural light is reduced by our building, and their solar panels were obstructed. We did extensive shade studies and actually walked them through this over a go-to meeting there in Thailand. And we found that even in the worst case scenario, which they used in the letter during the December 21st on the winter solstice when the sun is the lowest, their solar panels are completely unobstructed by 9:45 a.m. During the time before that, the short time before that, that we are shading them, everything is shaded. The Coddington's house to the left, to the south of me, is shading me. I'm shading them. They're going to be shading the house that's eventually built on the vacant lot next to them. It's just the nature of the downhill slope, especially during those months. But overall, the shading, they were relatively unaffected. After we explained that to them, they actually acknowledged it and said that most of their concern was for the untangible mass, the general feeling, especially coming from the garage that was next to their house. After that conversation, we then shifted the garage over 4.5 feet to the left, creating more of a setback and more space, and shifted the whole main building over 2 feet, creating more space between the setback, more space for plants and trees that can be planted for privacy, which was the next concern that I'm going to get to. During that meeting, we actually went window by window, and every single window that was eye level or below, we've already made obscure or opaque. We intentionally put minimal windows on that north side of the house from the beginning of the project to alleviate that concern. We're requesting 2 AUPs for this project. The first is for reducing the front yard setback. Almost every other house on the downhill side of the street is constructed.
You have less than a minute, so.
Okay. They're all constructed the same way, including Rick and Rebecca's house and Fred's house. Everyone has that AUP because no one's going to push a driveway 20 feet down a steep hill. Otherwise, it becomes too steep to use. It's a busy street, as some of the neighbors have noted, and to back out of a steep driveway is just unsafe. The plans that you're looking at tonight have already been subjected to analysis and redesign involving the architect's best efforts to take specific requests and suggestions into account. We went over extensive shade studies for every month of the year at different times of the day and went over every window placement of the house. As a result, not only was the garage completely shifted, the house has been shifted, and all windows in question were opaque. I hope the board will look carefully at the design of this home, see that the house is going to be built in a way that mirrors all the other homes on the street. There's no doubt that building a house next door to where a vacant lot existed will have impact, but we've tried to mitigate that impact.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there questions for the applicant? Teresa?
So did you try to get the building below or at 28 feet average height? And what was the result? What would be the result of that if you tried to make the building
We did.
to not ask for that use permit,
Sure.
AUP?
So that AUP is a little bit tricky because we intentionally pushed the house so far down the hill to alleviate neighbors' concerns. That lowest point is even lower. It's somewhat of a technicality. If we were to separate the garage from the main house, we wouldn't be applying for that AUP. And we could have just done that from the beginning, but it would have kind of been form over function. I mean, to be able to access the main house from the street level makes sense. And because we pushed the house so far down the hill, the calculation is somewhat
So
skewed.
it gets steeper.
Right.
And also, basically the part of the house that's in the setback is the garage.
And the driveway.
In the driveway, right, it's in the front setback. The garage is the part of the building that's in the front setback.
The garage and the driveway, correct, yeah. I think that it's a very common AUP that I think almost every other neighbor on that street has, because the garage can't be, pushed down the hill like as if it were in the flats.
Yeah,
Right.
thanks. We see that on the plans, that the other neighbors have driveways that reach out to touch the street.
Exactly.
Right, and the bedroom that's below it is underground, basically.
Right, on that level,
Yeah.
there's no other living
So
space.
I just wanted to,
You drop down because we've pushed the hill,
And
we
that's-
pushed the house down the hill.
that's the other AUP you're asking for. Is
The
the
driveway
setback.
and the.
Reduce
Is the
height.
front setback and the average height.
Correct.
Yeah, there's two, right.
All right.
So could I ask
Yeah,
staff a
John, go
question?
ahead.
Because he raised something that
Yeah,
I want
please do.
to clarify. California used to have a state law requiring folks who had solar be made whole if their solar was impacted. That no longer exists. That was back in 2010, 2012. It's not on the books anymore.
I'm not sure which law that you're referring to, but the name of the solar access,
Yes.
something that we've looked up a couple of times recently because neighbors have raised those concerns. It doesn't relate to shadows from proposed structures. So
And
I
Then
guess the
what
answer to
would
your-
what would it refer to? See, that's illogical to me, but okay.
And just to be
I,
clear.
it was my understanding that, okay, I'm going
Right
to
now, we're up
research
at the
this
ZAB,
myself,
so-
but okay. And it's not, doesn't seem significant, but it did raise that issue for me.
Patrick, sorry. Are you done?
Yes, question. What is your intended use of the media home office level, and do you see at any point in the future that becoming or applying for an ADU?
No, I don't. Most of the houses in that area that were built in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s have this space, and it's a basement crawl space area. Our intention from the beginning of the project was to build that space out so it could be used as either a home office, room for kids to play, or area for grandparents to come over and stay. Now, if you've driven by the house, you'll see that the backyard is pretty much a cliff.
Mhm.
So there's no usable backyard space. It's mainly going to be a playroom for kids since they have no other outdoor space there in the house. That part of the house is about 1,000 square feet. And it's somewhat of a misconception since it's space that would be a crawl space or basement that's built out. It feels like the square footage, if someone just looks at the plan, it sounds like a huge number. So that was the...
well, I'll say the question was triggered largely because there's an independent exterior stair directly down to that unit from the street. So you have kind of, for single family or relatives using a house, you've got two sets of stairs, one exterior, one interior, serving all levels. So that's why it triggered. And there's nothing wrong with that. I believe you'd be allowed an ADU under current code as far as I'm aware. So I am actually just encouraging that if you think it might be a possibility in the future, it might be a good idea just to apply for it as part of the application.
Sure.
Other questions of the applicant? Yes, Commissioner Olson.
You say you met with the neighbors to the north.
Correct.
And ended up, I can see all the obscure glass.
Right.
Did you do the same thing with the neighbors to the south?
Most of the south-facing windows aren't, there's no privacy issue there because of the way we've designed it.
Okay. But you didn't meet with them to make sure of that?
We did actually meet with them. We had a meeting with them when they signed off on the original plans, and so far that hasn't been an issue. But any issues that come up, I'd be happy to address if there is privacy issues. Just like they don't want me looking into their windows, I don't want them looking into mine, so I think the interests are pretty aligned, and I'm very open to protecting everybody's privacy, including my own.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we open the public hearing, hear what folks have to say, then we can bring it back for further discussion and questions. So I have 4 cards. If folks could come forward so they're ready to testify when I call your name, that would be great. The first card I have is Susan Sands, followed by Reba, and then Rick O'Connell.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Susan Sands from 1430 Campus Drive, 3 doors down from 1446, and my husband, Fred Schlachter, who's traveling, and I had lived there for 27 years. We've raised our son in that house, and we love our neighborhood. And I welcome development of the lot at 1446, and I want to acknowledge that the applicants, the Fords, have been extremely polite and respectful and have made adjustments to the design based on conversations with neighbors. My problem with the current design is the size, its excessive size, which at over 4,200 square feet is out of character for our neighborhood of modest homes. I do not agree with the staff report finding that the proposed development conforms to the scale and character of the neighborhood. Here is a chart of house size in our neighborhood, and it was created from a survey of nearby homes on Zillow. The short black bars represent about 21 houses in the immediate neighborhood, and the taller blue bars represent around 100 houses in the larger neighborhood. We excluded homes on double lots. So the median house is around 1,600 square feet. While the proposed house is 4,227, and you can see it's way out here. And it will be the proposed construction at 4,200 square feet is the size of 2 adjacent houses combined. And it will be the largest house in the neighborhood by 1,000 square feet, and that's not counting the 400 square foot
your time is up.
garage. It's up?
Yeah.
Okay, just one thing. We request that the board deny the height AUP and require applicants to reduce the footprint of the house.
Thank you
for your time.
Reba, followed by Rick O'Connell.
Do you have an overhead? Can I hand you a handout? I have.
Okay, thank you. Ready to go?
Yes, hello. Thank you for hearing us tonight. My name is Reba Jones, and I live across the street from the proposed project My house was built in 1957 on the upper slope of Campus Drive, and it takes advantage of the view towards the Golden Gate Bridge and to the city. I look across from my living room directly through their lot, and yes, there's eucalyptus trees there now, but in my view quarter, but trees can be cut down, they could fall down, they could be removed, but houses cannot. The Ford's project cuts off a few feet of the water view from my living room. If they were to lower the garage roof elevation down to a height of 3.5 feet lower to the height of their stair penthouse, then my view would be preserved and my concerns would be alleviated. The Fords have told me that it's not possible. The drawing that I passed out to you is basically showing a driveway slope of about 15%, showing that if the house was moved back past the setback, that it would actually have pretty much the same slope it does now. I had to guess at the size of the driveway, and so I guessed that it was only 16 feet long before you hit the property, which Greg said that it's actually 20 to 25, so the slope would be less than 15% if they pushed it back. The maximum slope for a driveway that would actually be safe is 25%, so this is a lot less than that. I ask you to deny it not only just because of the view, but there's no guarantee that they would put a parapet on or any equipment on top of the roof, and so my view would be even blocked further. I don't understand why the APU has to be granted when each floor has a 10-foot inside ceiling height on each level of the house. The overall accumulative height from the ground to the top is well over 44 feet. That's including the garage. The calculations that are done on their drawings do not include the garage height. As you can see in the drawing that I handed out, I respectfully ask that it's been denied. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick O'Connell, followed by Elizabeth Watson and Nigel Blair Johns. I guess we get one of you.
Good evening, members of the ZAB. I'm Rick O'Connell. I live at 1442 Campus. That's the house directly north. I moved to the neighborhood 10 years ago, and I'm raising 2 young daughters. I first want to thank the Fords for taking the time. They did spend a lot of time discussing, and we spent actually a lot of time doing a lot of analysis and work. But we still have significant concerns around light and privacy. I think you've heard a lot of concern around the height and why they need an AUP. I just don't understand why a new build can't be thought through and meet the AUP requirements. Their proposed project is a full story higher than my house. It looks like only 3 feet on the plans, but it's a flat roof and I have a peaked roof. And our privacy is going to be impacted. You know, they have done work on obscuring a lot of the windows, but there's still a key window that's not. And there's also just a privacy concern from our garden and patio where our children play is our primary outdoor space, because you heard how steep the hillside is. And there's views down from like the bedroom underneath the garage and things like that. There's also light issues. You heard about my solar system. And again, our garden and patio and play area will be affected by light. It's pretty much going to be shaded for the entire winter and about 50% shaded during the spring and fall. And there's also, our skylights will be shaded. We have significant skylights on the roof. So and then I think you've also heard from Susan and probably from others about just the size. We submitted a letter to the ZAB that was signed by 15 neighbors all around the house. I'm just very concerned about the size. The ratio of floor area to lot size is 66%. While that's not really used in your guys' world, that still, I think, shows just how much of an outlier the house is. So I think in conclusion, we don't really understand why, the AUP for height needs to happen for a new house.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Elizabeth Watson.
Hi. Before I start, I'd like to point out that my neighbor, Reba Jones, is a licensed architect, so the drawings that she gave you are prepared by a licensed architect. My name is Elizabeth Watson, and I've lived at 1435 Campus Drive for 12 years, which is 2 doors down and across the street from the proposed project. My husband, Nigel Blair Johns, is traveling for work and cannot be here this evening, so I'm speaking for both of us. I'm also a Zero Waste Commissioner, and I'm particularly grateful to you for your service. We welcome the single-family home at 1446 Campus, but we would like to see something that is built in character with the houses in our neighborhood. At over 4,200 square feet, this house is substantially larger than the houses nearby. It is more than 3 times the size of our house. The massing at street level and the height are particularly problematic, as it feels as if it's a giant that will loom over us. The flat roof and with the story poles in particular makes it feel very substantial at street level. In particular, we do not see the justification for the AUPs that the developer is requesting. Why does it have to be so tall, and why does it have to be so close to the road? They have ample room to build a large, comfortable, and marketable house and stay within the setbacks and also be more consistent with our neighborhood. We also have questions about the media room. It has an exterior entrance, a bathroom, and a mechanical room which could presumably house the home services and infrastructure. It looks ready-made to be convertible to an ADU. We are not insensitive to Berkeley's housing needs and recognize that ADUs play a role, but if that is what it is, it should be permitted as such. Whether it's another unit or just more space, the house of this size requires ample parking. Moving the garage back to the prescribed setback would further ensure that the parking would be adequate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to address the ZAB on this item? Would the applicant like to come back and have a few moments to respond, or are you guys okay?
Some images. Are you able to put those up?
Okay. Sure. I guess I'll say that I think there's some very large misconceptions about the AUPs and what exactly we're asking for and how they're calculated. Someone mentioned that the ceiling heights it's ironic and very misleading because the ceiling heights in the interior of the house actually have nothing to do with the height AUP. Because the house is pushed so far down the hill, you're taking the lowest point and the highest point within the house, even if the ceilings were reduced from 10 feet to 8 feet or 7 feet or 6 feet, this AUP would still be being requested. Ed, do you want to speak to the
we have some additional images. My name is Ed Seuss. I'm the project designer at Studio GS Architects, and is this a pointer? I need to read which one is it? Sorry. Okay. I think I need one. So that's it. Oh, it's got a hole in it, maybe. Okay. We provided this overview, the massing of the house, to kind of explain our thought process, if it's helpful. This is a particularly, I think it's a challenging site. Beyond the fact that it's a hillside, because we have the one house located uphill, which is to the south, is uphill from us. There's a cross slope. Campus Drive is sloping downward towards the north, and the main house is pulled up closer to the street. So it's pretty conventional, I think, in terms of a hillside home. Garage at the top, and then the main massing of the house below, and the house, which is located to the north, and is similar in the fact that it has a garage at the street level, but it's detached, and the home itself is close to 2 stories below that entry level, and pushed down the hill. So what we attempted to do was to, one, as you've heard, we left the garage up at the top of the slope, essentially, because the problem with pushing it down, I mean, I do disagree. 25% does not seem like a safe slope to me to enter into a driveway. It seems excessive. So we chose a 10% slope, which I think is reasonable. I mean, maybe you could push it slightly. But basically what happens is the slope of the ground is much steeper than the slope we can approach with the driveway. And so the ground is literally falling away from us. And effectively what happens is if we are assuming like a 1 in 10 slope, the ground is literally going away 5 feet in 10. It's a 50% slope. And so every foot we drop the building, effectively, we add 4 feet in height to it because it's going down a little bit, but the ground is falling away faster. And so we wind up with a garage that's even higher relative to the adjacent grades. And so if we were to push it, none of the houses really have garages that are 20 feet back from the front yard setback for that reason. So you can see that in addition to the house to the north, all of these garages are located closer to the street for that reason. The main bulk of the house we did try to drop towards the bottom of the hill and in fact match the massing or proportions of our neighbor to the north. And this is the piece here. This piece here is the stair tower. So that's the garage, the stair tower, and then the bulk of the house, the main portion of the house. This is the side elevation. On the top, you can see the garage here. This is the kitchen, and this is a bathroom. This level right here is the level that's used for the bedrooms. And then the unit below, or the space below, is down here. And you can see that a large portion of it is excavated. I mean, there's some substantial retaining walls being used in the development of this space. This perspective kind of shows what's typical, and this is our neighbor to the north. Their garage sits up towards the top of the hill, and you get, a 25-foot high wall or whatever, something 20 to 25-foot high wall at the back, just because it's sloping so significantly. And we tried, you can see here from the street view, to minimize the impact on neighbors' views from across the street. This is our attempt to explain average grade and average height. This blue plane here effectively represents the average grade, and that's the point where we take the grade at the base of the building and at the top. And it's a long building. I mean, it's elongated down the hill. So as we mentioned, that drops that grade plane here, and then this plane is literally 28 feet above that. So that's how that was constructed. And because we wanted to keep the house, again, the garage up near the street, and I feel it's only, there's only so steep we can make that driveway and make it effective and safe. There's a difference in height between those two. This was just an illustration we had done because a lot of folks had said, why don't you just push this thing back out of the setback? And so what happens is, you can see this, what happens here is basically you gain 18 inches or so, but you've added 6 or 7 feet or 8 feet to the height of the building. So when we push it back from this location back into this one, well, yeah, that's great. You picked up a little bit, but you've made the building taller, and it's actually worse for our neighbors to the north in terms of shading it. It's like right there and there, right there. And so we really did try to mitigate that garage element, and we did that. At this point, we have close to a 10-foot setback on that side.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Could you go back to the average height thing?
Yes.
So is just the white part of the garage the part that's over?
Yes, the portion that's over is
over the 28
the
feet.
Stair tower.
Is a little bit of stair tower and the garage there.
Correct.
Okay,
That's the
thank
portion
you.
that's not complying. This is probably illegible.
Yeah, why don't you keep going? That's not very helpful.
Okay.
Thanks.
I don't. Okay. I did want to just make one comment that this is the bay, and so we are really not obstructing water line. I mean, the view of the water, or I don't think. The other thing I want to mention is we just received. I saw there was a letter of concern that the shading was going to be horrible at the equinoxes. So the city requires us to look at different times of the day to study different times of the year rather to study the impacts of shading. The summer and the winter solstice. Summer's easy, the sun is very high. Winter's super hard, the sun is very low, so it casts long shadows. Equinox is halfway in between. There was a note that we were obstructing 60% of the outdoor space in the front of the house here during the equinoxes, but that's not true. So this little triangle represents what happens at 9:46, which is, I think, a time the city, this is at noon, and this one is, I can't read it, but I think it's 5:30. So, and then finally we did an additional one I wanted to point out. This is the winter solstice, and this is something we had done for the solar panel issue that was brought up, and this is 9:46. Oops, excuse me. This is 9:46, December 21st, and much before that, the hill itself is shading these houses.
Can you wrap it up? This is
I'm sorry.
becoming a kind of long dialogue.
Okay, so here's the solar panels slightly obstructed, and then by 9:45 they're unobstructed. So I just wanted to
All
point
right,
that out.
thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant?
I have one question. The third floor plan has a court, breakfast room, living,
Yes.
hall, dining, bedroom, etc. Do you know how many square feet are on that floor total?
Says on the front sheet.
I
The
didn't
front
bring the
sheet?
drawings up.
The third floor says 1647.
Thank you. And I was curious, the court shown there seems to be a very nice open, space. I appreciate how difficult it is to get outdoor spaces that are usable on a hill, but just from a design standpoint, just curious there are a lot of reasons why you'd have that court. What do you see its purpose?
I think a lot of it is, the main public spaces are up at that floor.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if kids are hanging out or people are hanging out, that's a nice space to come out onto. That gives you actually usable space. The neighbors to the north also have a similar deck. I mean, kind of they do the same approach.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, the neighbors to the south. So we wanted to kind of match the massing of theirs to kind of double that open space in between and give a little relief literally to the space between the buildings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, those are all good reasons. I was just wondering what yours were. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, bringing it back to the ZAB. Are there further questions of staff? Folks want to initiate their comments? Yes, Shoshana.
I would like to get staff response to the assertion that this building's square footage makes it way out of scale with the rest of the buildings in the neighborhood. That was asserted by the commenters, but I'd like to hear staff's opinion on that issue.
Well, the information that they presented, I believe they said they pulled from an online real estate source. I have not pulled square footages of homes in the area, but I believe that most recent single-family homes approved in the Hillside area are comparable in size.
Did you do a square footage-based analysis?
No.
Just to add to that, really the findings, the focus of the findings relates to privacy, shadow, findings of detriment. So insofar as the building mass would result in detriment, that's really where we would have focused.
What about for the neighborhood compatibility, though? I mean, I believe it was asserted in the staff report that its design is compatible with the neighborhood development patterns, and it sounds like maybe that's not the case with regard to square footage.
So it sounds like that's something that you might not be comfortable with.
I'm just asking what your opinion is, because when people come and say things, I like to hear the official response.
Other questions, comments? Yes.
First of all, this does seem to be a very well thought out and well put together. I'd say pleasing in its general massing and arrangement of openings and spaces and voids and so forth. So I commend that. I commend your outreach to the neighbors. However, after looking at the plans, I did drive up and look at the story poles, and frankly, I was taken aback. I think it is wildly out of scale with the neighborhood and the general pattern of development in the neighborhood and the general pattern of the Berkeley Hills, and it's a great textbook to go around and see how the problem has been solved over the years. Things like the garage, for instance. You've got, I think it's much bulkier than it need be. It could be a carport. It could be an open deck. It could be half a carport, half an open deck. Any one of those variations, which you see a lot of in the hills. And also you do see a lot of separation between the parking and the principal structure. I think it's actually relatively rare that a downslope hillside house is entered directly from the garage. So I feel like there's a lot of kind of bulk that's been added to accomplish that relationship. And the exterior courtyard seems to be perhaps done at the expense of the neighbor to the north, where the bulk of the house with the minimal setback exactly lines up with that residence. And I can see the concern of that neighbor that their sun and light and simply the presence of this bulk is going to be a tremendous impact on their building, obscure glass or not. It may well be that it serves the residences on both sides to flip the plan from north to south, for instance, and put the open spaces on the north side, where they have, then you're giving more setback, more breathing room, more sunlight access to the north house, when the south house doesn't really need that. So I think there's a lot that's good about this, but I think it is excessively large. You can, for instance, is a garage. If you do a parapet, well, that simply adds height unnecessarily. You can do a thin structure. You can do a downslope roof. There are various things you can do to minimize the bulk. It's just a spot for cars. And on the use permits, the question was asked, well, did you look at designing within the 28-foot envelope, within the 20-foot setback? And I thought the answer was unsatisfactory. It really wasn't about the steepness of the drive, because you can simply carry that same grade of drive further into the site. And yes, that does push the building down slope, but it also pushes the net elevation of the building down. So, all of those things may help the neighbor, and I feel that the justification is insufficient and the alternatives were not sufficiently explored.
Thank you. Other discussion? Teresa.
So the way I like to look at this is if the administrative use permits were not being asked for, and they redesigned it to accommodate those, I don't feel that the the project, how do I put this, if the garage wasn't there, the rest of the house would still be there, and it would still have the same impact, right? And the height is really just this bit of garage. 3 foot of the garage is, basically above the height and part of the stair tower. So there's a very small part of the building that's exceeding the height. And that is not the part of the building that is really objectionable in my mind. I think that, when you look at it from the campus drive, the garage is quite, reduced in height. You hardly see it at all. So I don't feel like having no garage there would make much difference. And and that also applies to the front yard setback. You could just remove the garage and you wouldn't have to have that use permit. So on the first use permit, we've got a house, and if they didn't have either of those AUPs, I don't think we would have many adjustments to do under the law. So I think that, I kind of think that the the request for both of these is reasonable. I think the design is very attractive. It is bigger, true, but I don't think that making it smaller would reduce the impact of shading or privacy or any of those items. So when I look at what the true detriment would be, and if they redesigned it to eliminate the garage, eliminating the garage would eliminate basically both of their AUPs, their AUP requests. So, and I think it's actually better to have a garage there. So I think it's acceptable to me, and I think if they did have an ADU, I think that at the the lowest level, I think that would also be acceptable. I think we do want to encourage multi-generational living. And so I think the square footage is acceptable because, I think we do want to encourage that lower space to be used by the grandparents or an accessory dwelling unit. So I think this fits, and I think, we're trying to add more density to the city, and this project would actually allow an ADU to be created later, and I think it's a good design, so I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Shoshana.
Yeah, thanks, Teresa. I'm leaning Teresa's way. I want to point out that this is in the hillside overlay, obviously, and one of the stated purposes of the hillside overlay states that we should grant any modifications necessary to account for odd issues with the topography of the land and steep slopes. And so I think that we should grant the front yard setback reduction. And we can see that it makes sense in that all the other neighbors have similar design setups. And I brought up the square footage issue, and I'm still not sure how I feel about it, but everything else about the design of this house really does seem compatible with the neighborhood. And I especially like this rendering. I think you can really get a good sense of what it's going to look like and how it fits in. And I want to add, I know this neighborhood very well. I grew up in this neighborhood. I know this type of house, and it looks like it fits in perfectly. The outside square footage gives me pause, but I think it might just be very well designed. I think they're using that kind of triangular space very efficiently. I think it might be okay. It doesn't seem bulky to me.
Okay.
And I think that's it.
Carrie and then John.
Well, I didn't grow up in this neighborhood, but if they took my neighborhood with similar size houses and put a house of this size in it, my neighbors would be as upset as these neighbors are. That is really not a street frontage that we would expect in Berkeley. Obviously, the old adage about building with nature has gone out the window. My dad wasn't a builder in Berkeley for 40 years, but he was an architect in Berkeley for 50 years and did a lot of projects in the hills. And his projects were minimalist, not maximizing. And it seems like to fix the issue of maximizing, I love what Patrick had to say. The garage could be changed into a carport. It doesn't need to have that bulk. Certainly the stair tower doesn't need to be a continuous stair. It could be like most houses in the hills, in two segments, going down to different levels. I absolutely do not buy that lower level is for multi-generational use. My parents are 90. No way they would go down that far. They would be up at the top level, and I hope that's what you do for your folks, and plan accordingly. So I think we should ask. I have no problem with them having a non-conforming setback in the front. There are a lot of houses like that in the hills, but I do think that the viewscape, and I did go up to it yesterday, and I saw as well that it was large, and I can see why the neighbor across the street is worried that they aren't going to have the same viewscape down to the bay. We used to have a view ordinance. Do we still have a view ordinance?
We have views that are protected.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other comments? John.
So I did have some concerns about this when I went over it in my time. The massing, the average height concerned me because that's 5 feet above the average height, the AUP. And I think Patrick hit it on the head for some of my concerns. I think you articulated those well. I still have concerns. So I think at this point I can't vote to approve. I will probably abstain. I would like to see the massing reduced somehow. I think, Patrick, you suggested that if it was pushed back down a little bit, it might reduce the height. I'm not sure if that's feasible or not, but I think it could be played with further. I really do. So I'm not sure I can approve this tonight, as is.
Other discussion?
I
Charles and then Shoshana.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the comments of my colleagues, and I'm kind of, cogitating on this whole thing. I do have a couple of thoughts I'd like to just add to the mix. I found this to be, initially a very compelling illustration from one of the neighbors about, getting the garage sort of out of the way, and then heard the architect's explanation of, why they weren't doing that. I have had to design houses in the hills that had 15 to 25% slopes, and they're pretty nasty, in fact, illegal at the point where you enter the garage or enter the street. It's not safe. But I thought the other point was the better point, which is that what he was saying is, and it's true, because the slope of the hill falls away quicker than even a 15% slope, the further that garage gets from the street, the higher relative to the slope it is. It is lower relative to sea level. But if you look at it, Patrick, the back corner of the red one, is actually almost eclipsing the maximum allowed height. So, on that point, I'm feeling like, okay, most of the garages, apparently the neighbors' garages certainly are within, 3 to 5 feet of the street. That's what they're asking for. It seems reasonable. It is a standard for this community. It would be nicer if it was a carport. I would love them to do a carport, but I'm not prepared to make them do a carport when the neighbors have garages. That's my thinking about that for what it's worth. I do think that the neighbors' concern about parapets going on top of that garage or equipment going on top of that garage are absolutely reasonable concerns, and however we go with this tonight or whenever, I would certainly make a condition of any approval that there would be no equipment allowed on top of that garage. That's obviously a bad idea, and I think we would certainly need to make that a condition. I don't know if that's adequate to bring me around to saying, yeah, I'm going to vote for it. But it's a condition that would be, at least for me, a necessary requisite to moving in that direction. In terms of the size of the house, I really appreciated the neighbor's illustration of that. I thought it was very powerful. We haven't been able to confirm that Zillow got it right or whatever. I do think staff is correct that homes today that are getting built in the hills because of property value, what it costs to buy the land, et cetera, although this has been in the family for a while, if I understood. Anyway, they tend to they are getting bigger and bigger and huger and huger. And at first I was saying 4,000 feet. Come on, people, do you really need that big a house? But I took a look at the very bottom floor, which is dug into the hill, and is basically an understory. I mean, we could make a condition that they can't, I wouldn't do this, that they can't develop that understory, that it would just be, a crawl area. Over 1,000 feet would come out of the total mass. I forget what it is exactly. But then you'd have a 2930, square foot building, which, given contemporary standards, is not that ridiculous. So initially I was going, gee, maybe we need to reduce the massing just because it's so huge. But I think that's kind of bonus space, and I'm not really personally that excited about thinking of it as like the main body of the house. If we did want to reduce the massing, I did have one idea for that. A point that John has made in the past, and this isn't a variance request, but when we provide even an AUP, we want to know why. And that's why we're talking about the garage, and that's why we're talking about the height. When I look at the section of the building, what I notice is that, and I'm looking now at I'm actually looking at the elevation A3.2, When you look at A3.2, and rather than the absolute or the average height, I really like to look at the maximum height limit. That's the diagonal, the 35-foot diagonal line that's on the top of that drawing. It says 35-foot maximum height limit on the left for my colleagues here. If you imagine, that we wanted to enforce the 28 feet, or at least get closer to that, maybe 30 rather than 35, the garage pops up, but it's still well 4 feet, I would say, below that line. The stairway doesn't bother me so much. It's such a minor element, in the design. And the first and second floor don't go above 28 feet. It's really just that main living area that, that projects out and requires them to ask for this substantial a height exception to take it within a couple of inches of the maximum allowable. So what I'd like to offer to my colleagues as a way of maybe coming to peace with this is requesting that the applicant pull back that floor. That is their main living floor. It's why I was asking the questions about its size and so forth and about the courtyard, because I think that you could reconfigure that where it would still be quite livable space. It's a large, kitchen, dining, living space, and we all love that. But if you did pull it back a little bit from, I guess, the west side, so that the total requested AUP exception would be reduced, you could have a larger deck there facing out to the west, which of course is a nice place to have it. And you might take some of that courtyard that you were using for these other purposes to sort of make up for some of the lost square footage. So it's just a thought of a way to maybe start to address some of the neighbors' concerns and some of my colleagues' concerns about such a large building in this location. So that's all I have to offer.
Okay. Other thoughts?
Yes.
Actually, Shoshana was next, sorry, and then we'll
Mine's
get
quick.
you, Patrick.
I had another thing to say and I'd forgotten. As I mentioned before, I was sort of on the fence about this, but I think I am going to support it in some form. Sounds like you might make some minor adjustments, but I'm prepared to approve it. The thing that swayed me, and I'm saying this in case it helps sway anyone else who's on the fence, is just acknowledging how much the applicant has already adjusted the project to meet the needs of the neighbors. We see a wide variation of how much work has gone in ahead of time with projects like these, and this one is on the end of more work, and I wanted to acknowledge that the applicant, and I think that's swaying me to want to approve it.
Okay. Patrick.
I would actually second that admirable effort that has been made, but I think what is striking is that it seemed like this project went from a certain level of initial neighbor support, but went rapidly downhill as the size, the bulk, the story poles went up, and it became clear what the project actually was. And I would caution, I caution everyone about basing, the illustration's no longer there, but any bird's eye representation of a project is entirely abstract as far as its experience from neighbors or the street or the ground. So I'd be very cautious about drawing a conclusion from that. I think the piece that Reba did is actually very thoughtful, and what I want to stress is that I don't think it's important that the 28-foot height limit be adhered to simply because that's the number. By no means. I think what is important is, as Charles put it, the relation to sea level, or the relation to the street, the relation to the adjacent neighbors. So I think anything, it looks like a case where anything that brings it down relative to the neighbors, even though it admittedly, if that pushes it down slope, it may well even touch the 35-foot maximum at multiple points, but be much better potentially for the neighbors. So I think that's the level of exploration that I just find missing, and and the rationale for the current design, as I said, insufficient. And I think there are things like not just equipment on the ground roof, but just eliminate the parapets. Simple. You get the same volume. It's a couple feet lower. You know, so little things like that over the project can actually, you know, pull back the impact. And I plan on making a motion to continue because I think it's actually worthwhile having another round with the design. I'm an architect. I've gone many rounds with design boards, and I feel it's always been for the better. You hear a lot. You get
So
real
there's a
feedback
motion.
from
Is there a
neighbors.
second?
I can second that continuance, yes.
Okay.
I'd like to offer a substitute motion.
All right.
I would like to make a motion to approve it. And the reason I'm doing that is because, you know, again, I don't know if I totally made myself clear, but I think the two, if both of the AUPs were not being asked for, we would have to approve it, right? Because it would fall under the rule, you know, the state law. So that's why I was saying that. I'm not sure if everyone on the board understands that, but if they weren't asking for any AUP, we would not have any grounds to deny it. Is that correct?
Under the Housing Accountability Act?
Under the Housing Accountability Act. So I just want to make sure that all the board understands
Is that true? You can't
Yes.
make a finding of detriment
No,
on other grounds?
No, because they haven't asked for anything beyond a use permit. Is that correct?
Right.
Could you explain that?
Certainly condition the approval under the detriment finding. So no one here is proposing to deny it.
I don't think
We're
that's
proposing
quite.
to modify the design.
I would suggest not representing that as a law because I don't believe that is.
Well, the
Well,
housing
I don't
I
want
guess
to.
my point was.
We're not going to debate the Housing
Yeah.
Accountability
I
Act
was
because
just
no one's
trying to make a
proposing
point.
to deny it.
Right.
Right. So the two options are move to approve.
Right.
Did you want to incorporate any of Charles' modifications?
Yeah, so, but I was trying to make the point that the slight modifications to get, to not have the AUPs, I don't think would make much difference to the impact. So I'd like to make a motion to approve and to put a condition on that no equipment be allowed on top of the roofs at all, on any of the roofs, not just the garage.
Not even a satellite dish or a little dish thing?
No.
Okay, I mean, that seems a little
Yeah.
excessive. There are
Well-
reasonable things people might want on a roof, like a small thing. But we're not, I don't want to preclude them from putting
Okay.
a TV antenna or something.
TV antennas, okay.
Okay.
Well, let's write it with care. And also, I want to second the motion.
Okay,
but
so
but
that
now
was
that
it.
now I have an issue with this.
Okay.
So.
That no equipment would, no.
So how about no rooftop mechanical
No
equipment?
rooftop mechanical equipment that would obstruct the view.
Okay, yeah, then I'll second the motion.
Okay, so we have a substitute motion. Rules of order require that we vote first on the substitute motion, and then we can come back to the main motion. John? Yes, we can discuss the substitute,
So
absolutely.
I just want to address Teresa's comment about we wouldn't, if it weren't for the AUPs, but there are two AUPs, and really our discretion on ZAB are the AUPs. That's our discretion. That's what we can work with. Okay, so that's how I view. Okay.
So Shoshana?
Yeah, I want to read, though, regarding those AUPs from the city code regarding the hillside overlay. I referred to this earlier, but I think the point might be more well-made if I read the code. This is 2396.020, purposes of hillside overlay. D, allow modifications in standard yard and height requirements when justified because of steep topography, irregular lot pattern, unusual street conditions, or other special aspects of the hillside district area. So my point in bringing that up is that the two AUPs, we're encouraged to approve them because it's on the hillside, because arguably both the setback and the height are consequences of the shape of the lot. So I think it makes Teresa's point even stronger, that these are things we're really supposed to approve, and I think we should.
Other discussion? Yes, Brazil.
Well, after listening to my colleagues, my initial concerns were about the mass, and because I don't have any training in the area, I like to take on my colleagues' comments in regards to redesign. But also I was concerned with the additional 1,000 square feet of space that they would be getting, and the applicant hasn't clearly defined how they would use that space, so I would want to look into a condition that that space couldn't be used for an additional unit, especially if it was to be used for multi-generational purposes. I know that someone elderly, that space wouldn't be appropriate for them. So I would want a condition in there saying that that space couldn't be used for additional housing unit.
Okay. Charles, did you want to suggest any of your additions to Teresa's motion that Shoshana has seconded, so we get two clear motions in front of us?
Yeah, Brazil, I think that's a great point, but there's the city ordinance saying that, you can add another unit that I think was passed unanimously by council a couple of years ago, and I'm not sure, I don't know if we can impose.
If we'd be allowed to impose such
the accessory dwelling unit. So I think that's a good idea, but I'm not sure we can.
So that's not within our purview. That's not something.
State law now says if you can remodel a space with a building permit for any purpose, it can be remodeled as an ADU. So that takes away our ability to prevent it in a space that we're allowing to be built.
Yeah.
So in other words, what we're allowed to regulate is the visible mass of the building and the general use, which is single-family home and related accessory uses. And that's what we're trying to get to, I think, with these series of motions, whether it's continued or whether it's approved.
With our motion, we're trying to, with one motion, we're trying to redesign it, and with another, we're giving it to the applicant to redesign.
Yes, that's essentially what's in front of us. Okay.
One thing I would consider as an amendment to this motion, if it could get us to yes here, and I don't know if it could, I'd like Patrick to speak to that, would be if we made a condition here that the driveway, which currently is at a 10% slope, were increased to the maximum allowed by the city's traffic engineer. They have regulations about that for safety, and consequently the garage would drop accordingly, and the rest of the building drop with it. Just something I'm offering to answer that concern, because I think it's a valid point that a little discomfort for this developer to satisfy the neighbors would be appropriate.
Is that amendment acceptable to make?
I don't know if it's acceptable to Patrick to answer his concerns.
Sure.
He's the one making the amendment to continue, so.
Okay.
I mean, it's more of a question really for Patrick.
I think that's one possible ingredient in the mix, but there's so many interrelated aspects to this that I feel it takes a step back to really evaluate what's helpful or what's not, or what really helps neighbors' concerns, and what preserves the intent of the project, which, I have no objection with the intent. I think it is too large, but generally I think it's well done. The potential ADU space to me is non-controversial. I think, that could be an ADU for an able-bodied someone who likes walking 4 flights of stairs regularly as part of their fitness regime. That's fine. But I also want to make clear that my suggestion for redesign is not to try to achieve the 28-foot height or the required setback, because I actually don't think on this site either of those is entirely possible, reasonably possible.
I agree.
But within that framework, I think there is a lot that could be done that would be an improvement for the applicant as well as the neighbors.
Okay, so we have a substitute motion, which is to approve with no rooftop enclosed equipment. Do you accept the amendment that the driveway slope should be maximum allowed by the public works engineers or not?
No.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to call for the vote on the substitute motion, which will then move us to the main motion, or the original motion. So substitute motion, roll call vote.
All right. Board Member Solosky?
No.
Board Member Simon Weisberg?
No.
Board Member Khan?
No.
I'm sorry, was that no?
Yes, it was a no.
Board Member Brazil Clark?
I will say yes only because even with Patrick giving the redesign, it seems as if we would still have to approve the use permits in front of us, so I would say yes.
Okay. Board Member Olson?
No.
Board Member Sheehan?
No.
Board Member O'Keefe?
Yes.
Board Member Teresa Clark?
Yes.
Vice Chair Pinkston?
Yes, but the motion fails, is by my count, correct? So now we move to the motion to continue. I think we've debated this, and I'd like to call for the motion on the continuance. That's okay.
Board Member Solosky?
Yes.
Board Member Simon Weisberg?
Yes.
Board Member Khan?
Yes.
Board Member Brazil Clark?
Yes.
Board Member Olson?
Yes.
Board Member Sheehan?
Yes.
Board Member O'Keefe?
Abstain.
Board Member Teresa Clark?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Pinkston?
Yes. So I'd like to ask the applicant to do, you've heard the hearing, you've heard the testimony from the ZAB members, you've heard concrete suggestions for modifications to the plans to remove the objections, and right now you don't have enough votes. So you need to do some work between now and the time you bring it back to alleviate some of the particular concerns of the ZAB. Not that we're saying you have to get rid of the front yard driveway use permit. I think we're comfortable that that's a reasonable request in this neighborhood, but that concerns about the overall building mass, the visible mass, and the impact of that mass on your neighbors is still of a concern, particularly as it relates to the height of the building. So you need to push and pull and sink or tweak it in some fashion in order to reduce the visible mass above grade. Is that a fair summary?
And I would add, again, that adherence to the 28-foot height limit is not any sort of a condition of this request, that it's acknowledged that you probably will need additional height to achieve the goals of the project.
And as one ZAB member, I agree with that. I'm not looking for a hard 28 feet or a hard whatever.
Okay, thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you when you come back. That was the easy one. All right, so I'm going to keep us moving. We're now going to take up 1734 Spruce. Is there a staff report?
1734 Spruce is a use permit to legalize a 7th dwelling unit within a 6-unit apartment building and add 7 more bedrooms to the parcel, culminating in 13 bedrooms. The block is one block north of the UC campus. The project is consistent with the zoning code for residential density, parking, usable open space, and lot coverage. All work associated with the use permit will be interior work. There will be no exterior work other than removal of one door. Staff has been in contact with the rent board, and the rent board has reviewed the staff report and agrees with condition of approval number 34 and number 35. The concerns raised to staff include if the project is a mini dorm and the length and the duration of construction. Staff recommends approval because of its consistency with the general plan and the zoning ordinance.
Thank you. Other questions of staff? Seeing none, I'm going to move into the public hearing. First person to speak will be the applicant, Warren Yee. Mr. Yee, you get 5 minutes, and then we have about 9 or 10 cards to testify after that. So the applicant has 5 total minutes.
Hi. First, thanks for getting rid of that chopper noise that was irritating earlier. As always, I start out with reading your rules. This is for R3, 23D, 36, blah, blah. A, implement general plan policy by encouraging development of relatively high-density residential areas. That was A. B is make available housing for persons who desire both convenience of location and a reasonable amount of usable open space. And C, D, permit the construction of residential structures such as dormitories, fraternities, sorority houses, boarding and rooming houses, which will meet the city requirements for this type of housing. So from the rules that I get when I read your rules, my job was fairly straightforward and easy. It got me as far as submitting my documents, and then I got to the first hard part. And that was, after I submitted all of my documents as required, some guy at the end of the phone said, you got to do a Sanborn map. I haven't heard the word Sanborn map for years. And I said, it's not required, but I'll do it. Why do I do it? It helps us
Mr. Yee,
get
I just want to advise you, you've got 3.5 minutes yet, and we haven't actually talked about the project yet, so
Anyway.
you might want to move on.
Based on the Sanborn map, I asked my draftsman to do the number of units per lot on the entire block and all of the houses directly across the street. And it came out to an average of 10 units per lot. So I can see why the staff suggested using it, and it gives me a better feel for creating density.
Good evening. My name is David Clahan. I'm a contractor, business owner, resident of Berkeley since 1994. I also own a builder on Spruce. It started out as a single-family home that was made into 6 apartments in about 1950. It's been somehow operating as a 7-unit apartment. We've kept the bottom unit vacant since I purchased it last year so that we could do the restorations necessary in the building, the seismic, without displacing any tenants. I've personally gone door to door to all the immediate neighbors around the block. Some weren't home, but I feel like I got the majority. Almost everybody I contacted was in favor. I've had 2 meetings with the neighbors of the property to discuss the work that we're doing. Our first meeting was on July 27th. We had a good showing of people at the meetings, and the concerns of the tenants were with parking, noise, and density, and also displacement during the renovations and safety of the building. I have the required parking for 7 units, and currently they are not being rented. They all aren't being rented. We will try to keep the noise to a minimum, but it's noise during construction. We will abide by all of Berkeley's regulated construction times and work on Sundays. The building is an old, and all the electrical, mechanical, and plumbing is outdated. It needs a seismic reinforcement. All the kitchen and baths are in major need of repair. Whether we're approved to do the additional work we're asking for or not, the whole building needs to be remodeled. This work will not affect the timeline either way. We would wait until each unit turned over before we remodeled the units. It would take about the same amount of time. We had a second neighborhood meeting on September 6th. Some of the concerns were work schedule, mini dorms, plumbing and electrical upgrades to windows and the seismic. Upon approval of any project, I would start work immediately. They brought up concerns over mini dorms. I have no intentions of turning any of the units into mini dorms. If for some reason that would happen, the city of Berkeley has a very good plan in place that would be followed. Currently, we are renting to a couple of couples, artists, and graduate students. This is a very moderate project. I'm familiar with the density of the area. This is an area where density should be maximized, and I did not. I could have asked to reduce the existing house to 4 units and build a duplex or triplex on the back side. I'm going to cut down here. With that, I hope that you approve this project so we can get started on restoring another beautiful building in Berkeley.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, let's go ahead and move into the public hearing. The first card I have is for Emily. So each person at the hearing will get 2 minutes. And as I call your name, if you could come forward so that we don't need to wait in between speakers, that would be great. So the first 2 speakers are Emily Collins, followed by Carol Stone. If both of you could approach the mic, that would be helpful. Emily.
Hi, my name is Emily. I live in apartment 6 in the building, and my concerns have to do with the noise and the parking and I'm content with the studio apartment that I'm renting the way it is. I do have a car, and I find it difficult to find parking on the street. The reason that I chose not to buy parking from the building was because that it's $100 a month, somewhere around that. So I do the street parking, and it can be difficult to find parking, and I think adding more tenants into my building who may bring cars may make that more difficult. And I moved in January, and I think that the construction proposed would be a detriment to my living in the building or possible displacement from the building. So I oppose.
Thank you.
Can we ask
Sure,
questions?
yes, of course.
Ma'am, could you come? I just had some questions. Regarding the landlord had mentioned that there were empty units. Is that becoming an issue at all? I mean, keeping units vacant sometimes can lead to people breaking in or anything like that. Have there been any other issues?
Not that I'm aware of. I only moved in January. Was given no notice that any construction was being proposed, and I find my plumbing and utilities just up to code.
Okay. Carol Stone, and then followed by Stephen Jepson, if Stephen could come forward. Carol?
Okay, I have a lot of information. Did you all get these big packet that I brought today?
Yes, thank you.
The reason you didn't get this sooner is that the final plans were not available online till last Friday afternoon, and that was one day after the day they would have had to been sent out to you to get a week in advance. I live next door at 1730 Spruce. I've lived in my house since 1973. That's 44 years. The building next door is very similar to mine. It was built in 1913. My house was built in 1914. Both are two-story units with 3 in the back, but legally 2. In the application, it says it's 3 and minus 2. That's incorrect. There are so many alternative facts in this application if you look at it closely, and I won't have time to tell you all of them, but one of the most egregious is in the application of, says September 1st, and this is on the basement floor, and it shows that there's one door on the north. The setback on the north is 2 feet 6 inches. You need 4 feet. It says very clearly in the report that there is no intention of doing anything to the outside. But if you go to the most recent application, the finalized one, it shows 2 doors on that side. They remove one on the south side, which they've got plenty of room, and put 2 doors here where their setback is not adequate. And they also show in the current thing that there are 2 doors there. That's simply not the case. We've got lots of people here that live in the neighborhood or that live in the unit that will tell you that there's only 1 door there. They're proposing to put another door there. And the other door there's not even height for it. They'd have to excavate, and it would be underneath somebody's apartment. It's not mentioned at all. It's glossed over as though it's a non-issue. That's very serious. And why did they change it between the initial application and now?
Could you try to take a few more minutes to wrap up? Okay. If you have something else substantive to contribute, that'd be great.
Okay. There's a similar case, and I've included it in that packet. It's from 2014, and then appealed, and it was denied. And in 2015, it's 2110 Hillegas. That is zoned R2, not R3, but the issues are the same about trying to make a mini dorm. The amount that they want to increase this is enormous. And one other very important substantive point is that they state that there is 5,100 and some feet usable space in the building. The county records, and I've included a copy of that, says there's 1,000 feet less than that. And there are, to address your point earlier, as far as I can read on the thing, there's no dimensions that I can see. And I try to project it on my computer. So I have a lot more, but read through what I gave you.
Thanks for coming. Stephen Jepson, followed by Ava Victoria.
So my main, I also live at 1730 next door. I park on the street, and I'm primarily concerned that, as I understand, he may not say it's a mini dorm, but what he's trying to do is take out kitchens, replace kitchens with bedrooms, and have higher density. He says higher density is good. I'm not so sure. The neighborhood, it's always been north side, and that's not that dense. So parking and noise are my main concerns, although I do not share the concerns about the short-term construction-related noise or inconvenience. I think they should be able to do that.
Thank you. Ava Victoria, followed by Helen Tu.
Can I have your extra minute?
I'm Ava. I live at 1734 Spruce for 23 years. In 20 of those years, I have been the on-site groundskeeper, and I was assistant manager to the previous owner for 20 of those years. I'm very familiar with this building, changing fuses and everything else. The door that they want to remove on the driveway side, on the south side, is understandable in terms of what they want to do to the basement apartment, where I lived for 13 years. However, the fact that the second door to be placed on the north side was only recently revealed, and that it does have an interesting obstructive way to my apartment because I have a back porch. So I don't see how that door would go there. And it's been brought to my concern here that the distance between our property and our neighbor is not up to code. So I don't know how people would be using storage.
So just to clarify, you live in the applicant's building right now?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Helen Tu, followed by David Clahane. Oh, sorry. Already got you.
Hi, my name is Helen Tu. I'm the owner of a single-family house located at 1729 since 1973. For 44 years, I have noticed a lot of changes around my neighborhood. Now I'm very concerned about the 1734 expansion project from original 7 units to 13-bedroom units, which will increase the tenants from 8 to maybe 30. Even there is no obvious new additions to the original house. To me, this redistribution of spaces within its boundary will definitely increase the neighborhood traffic, noise, safety, health, sanitation, and parking on the streets. Even it complies with city R3 zone coding. At this particular moment, I personally feel Berkeley is overdeveloped by various developers regarding their housing needs. 10 or 15 years ago, there is not a single for rent sign on our street. Now I see almost every building on our street has rental available sign. I wonder and doubt, why do we need more 1734 expansion project in our neighborhood?
Thank you. Lori Kerr, followed by Holly Holmes.
Hi, I'm Lori, and I've lived in the building for 38 years. The owner proposes to double the number of tenants and could even triple them if he chooses, but the building isn't big enough to support all the additional bedrooms that he's planning on several counts. The units are already small, and the current bedroom's extremely small. Mine is 8.5 by 10 feet. Additional ones will likely be minuscule. There would barely be room for a bed where my tiny kitchen is now. Also, there isn't enough parking for all these prospective tenants. We're half a block from campus, and parking on the street is all but impossible. Meanwhile, there's only enough room in the carport for 7 tenants, and even then, trying to maneuver your car out of it is difficult for lack of space. The owner proposes to reconfigure each apartment after it's vacated, which means the construction will go on and on for years to come, with its accompanying loud noise and foot traffic in the building and lack of security and privacy. Our building has been robbed more than once, and while it's under construction, that risk will go up. We long-term tenants also may be exposed to asbestos and lead paint since the building is over 100 years old. Furthermore, not just as tenants, but our neighbors will be affected by the noise of so many students in one small building, originally a single owner residence, and ongoing construction, as well as lack of parking. The owner is willing to sacrifice quality of life for his current and future tenants, justifying it by saying this redesign offers a better and more practical use of the existing structure. Not so. Spruce Street is a quiet residential area with mostly privately owned homes, although there are already a number of apartment buildings to accommodate students and new ones going up all the time. To create new units that have absurdly inadequate space for their occupants is not, I would argue, a better use of the existing structure. We long-term tenants have enjoyed a quiet building through the years with tenants who were responsible and considerate and carefully chosen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Holly Holmes.
Hi, my name is Holly Holmes. I live at 1721 Spruce Street, which is across from 1734 and over 1. As an example, there are a number of discrepancies in both the application and I think as well in the staff report. So I'm hoping you will take the time to read the information that Carol has given you. I'm here just as a neighbor and to give you an emotional response to more impacting our street. Parking, if I didn't have one off-street parking spot, I would have torn my hair out by now. Additionally, the noise, the mere idea of having 8 tenants in that building go to something like 32 is insane. There's just not enough parking. There is not enough room. These will be, as Carol said, very, very small bedrooms. And although you can't call it a mini dorm, it seems to me that maybe it is a mini dorm. I believe someone here addressed the issue of vacancies. There are no vacancies in that building except the basement unit that they want to turn into a 3-bedroom unit. So I hope you'll really take some time and think about those of us who have already been greatly impacted on that street. It is a mixed-use street with some condominiums, lots of private residences, and some apartment buildings. And I really don't think that we need any more people on that street than we already have.
Thank you.
I cede my 20 seconds to Carol.
We actually don't allow you to cede time, but I appreciate the gesture. All right, bringing it, is there anyone else here to testify in this item? Did the applicant want a moment to respond to some of the comments made?
There's one more person here.
Okay, I don't have a card. That person will have to come forward and... Yeah, she already spoke. Thanks.
First of all, I want to apologize to Emily. She should have been notified that there was going to be some construction in there. And I'll talk to the property management about that. The door, I was just talking to my architect. He thought it was a little bit taller door and existing. That is not necessary to be there.
Which door?
On the north side.
There are two doors. There's one to, it says new bedroom 3, one to new utility room.
One's existing.
Which one is the existing one?
Neither door needs to be there. Oh, the utility door needs to be there just to get underneath the building. But to access the unit, there doesn't need to be a door.
Thank you. Is that clear to everybody?
Yeah, okay.
Also, the building meets all the requirements for the 7 units that have been there for as long as I think Diva's been around. It's gone up and down because of owners have split a unit or done something that were living there before. If the 7th unit is the issue, I'd like to combine one of the top units and back to original 6 unit. I just don't want this just to get ended just because of a 7th unit. So I'm willing to, as an alternative to this very good plan, which I really want to push, or I would like this one to go through. If it's necessary, I would like to offer the 6 original units using the space up there and combining one of the units back to what the city saw was originally.
Okay,
6.
thanks. We
I
have a couple
question
questions, yeah.
for you. So right now, let's say on unit number 6, you have 1 bedroom, right? And 2 tenants.
Yes,
According to the, and
I
then
believe there are a couple
okay, so then you're not proposing any new bedrooms on that one,
on 6.
right? On number 5.
I'm sorry, I have to look at this.
Yeah. So on unit number 5.
Teresa,
So
what page
6
are
is,
you on?
6 is a studio right now that
Okay.
the kitchen's just being moved over.
I'm looking on the front sheet of
Okay.
this.
Oh, got it, thank you,
Okay.
yes, thank you.
So, and then what I did was I looked in the staff report for which tenants are in which units. So that's on page 10 of 13, under A, neighbor community concerns, and then it has the tenants listed. So I was just wondering, on some of the units, like unit number 3, you're gonna propose 2 bedrooms, but there's only 1 person living there. So that person who's living there now gets to stay.
Yeah.
And you're gonna increase their rent?
No,
And
I
so
can't
they
do that.
will. So even though you're adding a bedroom, are you gonna have someone else live in that bedroom?
I won't be able, what I'm asking for is permission to add the bedroom when they decide to voluntarily vacate the unit. Not to, I'm not pushing anybody out of this.
Okay,
It's
so you're
because
not
of
gonna do
new
the
law.
remodeling until that person moves out, or?
Correct.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, as each.
So that's an important fact, I didn't realize that, so,
Would you be willing to
You're
accept
gonna-
that as a condition?
Sure, well.
Number 34.
okay, so yeah, that wasn't clear in your, I didn't really read
The only
the whole.
caveat to that would be is if there's a long-term tenant in there and they needed some new appliances and things like that, I'd have to be able to take care of them.
Well, and I did have a follow-up question
Can I
on,
finish?
along
Okay,
those
yeah.
same lines.
So what you're saying is,
Thank
you're gonna do these
Yeah.
remodelings once the person moves out?
Voluntarily.
Okay, thank you.
John?
Yeah, along the same lines. So essentially, you're going to be doing remodeling unit by unit when they become vacant. Is that how is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Because if you're waiting for them to voluntarily vacate, then that's the only way that it's going to happen.
That's correct, yes.
So this could be a number of years, really.
That's how it would have to be. It's how we do all the buildings in Berkeley right now.
Yeah.
I have 20 units I'm remodeling for different property managers
Okay.
right now.
Okay.
And
So
one at a
it essentially will be unit by unit.
Yeah, it'd be unit by unit.
Yeah, okay. All right, just so I'm clear. Yeah, thank you.
And the noise that's got to be made, I have to do the seismic work downstairs, and it affects the bottom unit, so I won't be displacing anybody during that time.
Other questions?
I have some.
I'm sorry, yes. Go ahead, Carrie, and then we'll get to you.
I have no idea what size your bedrooms are. Do you?
I heard your comment, I looked at the plans, and I said, I knew that was coming.
So, do you know?
The kitchens are, well, they're,
No, I'm not
The
concerned
existing
about the
bedroom.
kitchens. I don't know if it's to scale.
Yeah, I don't believe
I don't-
the reductions don't scale.
Yeah.
I tried that.
Been there, done that, it's not accurate.
Staff, is this a reduction?
It's on 12 by 18, then it should be half scale. And I believe those are 12 by 18.
Okay, so this should be a half scale, so it's a 16th.
But I don't, honestly, 14 years on design review, I do not, and I'm the child of an architect, so I do know how to draft. I don't trust it, and I just want to know what your smallest bedroom is. Do you know? Proposed.
the smallest bedroom meets the minimum required. It's guaranteed to be a bedroom by
Well, a
law.
bedroom can be 7 feet in the least dimension.
Yeah.
So the answer is
So
you
I-
don't know the square footage. I want to kind of move along the discussion. The plans are not clearly dimensioned. Yes, you can scale them off, but you don't have the answer.
Well,
yet.
actually you can't. These are 11 by 17. They aren't 12 by 18.
Fair enough.
So they're actually a 45% reduction, so they're very difficult to scale.
Thanks. Other questions? Is there some?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, one of the, I want us to have more units. I think that is important. I am concerned, though, that we are creating, housing that's actually not good for humans. People, aren't living, this isn't like how we want people to be living. And so I think that if I would feel, if I knew this was a, nonprofit, that this was going to be, housing that was, subsidized for students who are low income, or, I guess most students are low income. But, I mean, I think that one of the things I'm struggling with is that I'm seeing people living in very, very small units at very, very high prices. And so, and I think the students particularly, I mean, I've been, I live in part of the city where a lot of the new construction has gone up, and I'm seeing bunk beds through the windows, and that, students are bunking up in even the new construction that's being built because of the price. And so, and I'm very concerned when you have so many of the tenants who are, concerned. And so I guess I am concerned about that this is, in the size, and again, us creating long-term housing that's going to be less livable than what is there. And the vacancy will allow you to raise the rent, and because of its location, there's going to be a lot of turnover because of the student population. So these are going to be expensive and really, really small, and people are going to be less likely to stay long-term because it's not the kind of housing that people would want to be in long-term.
Okay, I think that was more of a comment than a question. Is that?
Well, if
do you want
had,
a response?
I mean, some respondents have had philosophies about how they designed it, so if there was something I was
Do you want to
missing.
respond to that question?
My response is they are, I think, at least an average size to what's being built nowadays. They aren't micro units by any means. They're, the bedrooms that are being converted are smaller bedrooms. They're an old standard kitchen that are in all the older buildings. That's kind of, some of these are also studios that are being converted to a one. The density doesn't increase that much, and it just makes better living for it to have a room to go into. The kitchen is a more modern living, having the kitchen in the living area. And the kids, they don't have the, I say kids, but people don't seem to have the living space in the center as much, in these smaller apartments as they used to.
If you look at the square footages.
Patrick was waiting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
There's just some square footages, so I was just going to refer you to that. The square footages of the units, I think that they're a little small, but they're not like super tiny.
Okay,
But for a
Patrick?
two-bedroom.
I just want to ask you, Carol mentioned that she thought the side yard on the north side was 2'6". Is that what you believe it to be?
Well,
there are no dimensions.
I
So
don't have a dimension
anyway,
here.
I'll just cut it short. You've got either a door or an egress window, certainly, for a bedroom, newly created bedroom, which cannot legally exit into a less than 3-foot side yard. So you might just be aware of that. That includes all obstructions, fences or otherwise.
I don't have an answer to that one because I don't know if the.
Well, I think that just
window takes care
underscores
of
the
that.
comment about dimensions. I actually found this extremely difficult to parse what was actually being proposed, what the illegal unit was, et cetera. It was just very difficult due to lack of information.
Okay. Do we have to, I just want to check on time. It's 9:05. Do we need to take a captioner's break? Can we wait a little longer?
Have you heard any? I'd say if we can power through this conversation, that would
All right.
be.
You know, you can ask the captioner how they feel, if they need a break, and they can respond on the text.
Captioner, how you doing there? Do you need a break? We're waiting to see if there's an answer that scrolls through here. So while we're waiting, does everyone have some direction on this?
Captioner says power through. Thank you, Captioner. Captioner, you're doing a great job. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Captioner. Okay. Discussion at the ZAB. Thank you for answering questions.
Thank you.
Bringing it back to the ZAB for discussion, feedback, direction. Who'd like to kick us off? Carrie.
I just want to bring up one other concern, just as we go through our conversations. I don't find that the kitchens proposed at all adequate for the number of bedrooms. When there are 3 bedrooms and one wall of kitchen, there's not going to be any place to store food, dishes, let alone for 3 different individuals who will probably each want their own cupboard space for food. And there are cases where the door placement, they're using existing door placement, and it's like right next to some place where it just shouldn't be.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Carrie. You know, I think what I like about this is that it is actually in some cases making some of the bedrooms bigger. Like if you look at the plan on A2, the existing bedroom has a bath, and then they're making that bedroom bigger and putting a closet in. So, you know, that's a positive. I think that the comment about the kitchen, yeah, I think you could make the kitchen more of an L shape and move one of the bedroom doors over. These are livability issues that we're concerned about because you are going to be adding, potentially adding people to the apartment. I think, you know, you want to make it as livable as possible. So, and I do think we should have the dimensions shown, which would be really helpful to evaluate. But in general, I like the idea of, you know, adding the bedrooms because, you know, the building itself is, you know, a lovely building, and, you know, those older buildings, you know, they do have problems the way they were laid out. And, I mean, I think this is an area that's close to campus. It would be good student housing. And, you know, I think we really need to encourage people to, you know, maximize the building envelope so that we can have more people housed. And, you know, we can't control the economics right now. You know, it's partly supply and demand. We'd have too many jobs coming into our area. But we always have the demand here in Berkeley because of the students. So, you know, we're always going to have this kind of rent issue. And they are rent controlled, which is a real big positive, right? So these are units that are going to remain rent controlled. So I would just like the applicant to spend a little bit more time on the design, but I think in general, I support the idea of adding these bedrooms and keeping all the units, because we just need this housing so badly. And the fact that it's smaller apartments actually makes them more affordable, because they are smaller. They're not going to, you know, they're not going to get the highest rent, and I think that makes it even more affordable for people. So over time, I think these are going to be affordable units, and each time a new tenant comes in, their rent is going to be, you know, stabilized. So, yeah, I would like to see maybe a little more thought to the interior remodeling, so that the space really works for more people, and that would be maybe my comment.
Okay, other comments? Patrick?
Yes, it's interesting that Emerson came before us, and I'm glad we talked some about that, because that was a case where a bedroom could be added without really much sacrifice in the livability of the unit or impact on the common living space. And so, in spite of my concerns, I voted yes for that. In this case, as Carol pointed out, this was a single-family home. 13 bedrooms in a single-family home. If that doesn't meet definition of mini dorm, I don't know what does. It's the same thing. And I mentioned the side yard egress issue is a possible problem. Also, on the south side, there's a bedroom with a window indicated, an original window, I believe, that appears to be too high to be an egress window, but that's because of grade. So that means to comply, it would need to be sized and lowered to meet egress requirements, and a light well would need to be established that meets exiting requirements. That's just the sort of thing that looks to me like it hasn't really been thought through. And I think that kind of runs through this whole proposal. I think taking functional kitchen spaces and converting them to bedrooms and jamming the kitchen into the living space degrades the common living space of all these units. And so I think there are real problems with this proposal, and there's no question we need bedrooms, we need housing, we need density, we need all these things. But there is a carrying capacity for a city or for a house. And once you exceed that carrying capacity, quality of life suffers for it. And I think this is a clear case of that.
Other comments?
Yeah.
Is there a motion?
One of the things that, the issue around parking, I suppose this is a question, but it would seem that I would want that the parking to be included with apartments, and so that to make sure that as many of the people who live there, and it sounded like because there were, people were not paying for parking because it was separated, and so I would want at least the condition during the period, that somehow the parking would be made, free to the people living there to kind of compensate for what's happening. I don't know if there are even available parking units there, so I understand there's only 7 or something, so.
Charles.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, so maybe they're all being used, so making them available doesn't help.
Yeah, Leah, in Oakland, they're actually requiring projects be unbundled. Are you familiar with that concept? And that's because frequently in a building like this, you'll have quite a few tenants that don't have cars. And so what happens in that situation is if the total number of tenants have 5 cars, you've got 2 spaces that could relieve some of the neighborhood pressure that don't get used. So that's Oakland's policy. That's not a Berkeley policy, but I bring it up because it's counterintuitive, but it's, when you think through it, it kind of makes sense. I mean, I like what you're saying, but the problem is if there were only 5 people with cars here, we'd have 2 spaces sitting there and it wouldn't help with the neighborhood.
Oh, but it seemed that there were tenants who weren't paying for the parking because they couldn't afford it and were parking on the street. And so, it seemed to hear we had an example of, I completely understand what you're saying.
We did, and it's in sympathy for that example that I'm in sympathy with what you're saying. I just point out that if she and 3 other people had cars, it means you'd have 3 spaces that would be available to the community, and we want to get cars off the street, So it's just one of those complicated things that, I want to second Carrie's point about having dimensions. I think given the concerns about the bedroom sizes, this project particularly would benefit from that. That said, I'm looking at sheet A2, and I want to commend you from a design standpoint for taking an existing unit that has one of these bedrooms that we would consider unlivable and replacing it with 3 bedrooms that are much larger than the one that we're losing. So, I can say that without having any dimensions. It's apparent when you look at the plans. you know, that trying to squeeze the bathroom and the bedroom into that one little corner obviously is not as appealing as a place to live as the remodeled bedroom in that space. So on, you know, on that floor, it's like, oh, better bedrooms. I don't know that, I mean, and in terms of the kitchen issue, oh, well, let me just finish on the bedrooms. So on the next floor, on the second floor, we have, this is the most compromised bedroom, bedroom number 2. The other bedroom is existing, and then there's bedroom number 2, sorry, in unit 2, which is the one where the kitchen is on the left currently. That one seems a little small to me. The others are pretty nice sized bedrooms. And then I really think on the top floor, the third floor, that taking the kitchen out of this corner and making that into a proper bedroom is an improvement to that studio. It upgrades the studio, makes it into a one-bedroom unit. It's not increasing the number of, you know, beds in the unit, even though it provides a bedroom that I think is a better design. On the other ones, the 2 existing bedrooms at the rear are unchanged, and we're just getting one more bedroom that's of comparable size. Sorry, 2 more that are of comparable size. So I think it's actually a pretty good design. On the kitchen issue, I'm not sure I agree that the kitchens that are here are such desirable kitchens. They're very old-fashioned rooms that are sequestered from the rest of the living space. It's not the way we live these days. It may have been when this was built. I think bringing the kitchens out into the living area is much more consistent with contemporary desires and standards. So that doesn't bother me so much, getting these sort of sequestered kitchens out of their little dark corners and bringing them into the living space. I think it's actually a really good design. So, and one thing that we do know is that in contemporary living, that this is probably going to be student housing, it's given its location near the campus. A lot of students just don't do that much cooking these days. They'll you know, grab something from you know, a study session in a cafe or what have you. That's what we've been witnessing. So anyway, I think it's a pretty good design for what it's worth. And I'd love to see the dimensions, you know, not just on this, but on everything we see in the future.
Carrie.
Just to follow up, I live with an open floor plan kitchen, so I'm not against it being open floor plan or in the living room. I'm against the amount of storage I see, which, by the way, extends to the bathrooms. And there don't seem to be laundry facilities anywhere. So since I live not that far away from here, I know that going a long distance with laundry is not something most people want to do if they can have an alternative, especially if we can encourage them to consider that as they're making a better future for this building for the next 100 years.
I have a question of the applicant. Is it possible to include an on-site laundry facility, or is that in here and we're just not seeing it on the plans?
I believe we could look at the space and make it possible. I think so.
Would you accept that as a condition? Would you accept that as a condition to provide a washer and dryer on site for the use of the tenants?
Okay. Other comments? Patrick.
Yeah, along that line, I have one suggestion would be to consider that on the lowest level where you apparently have some egress problems with the bedrooms that are dug into the slope. And the most desirable spaces are obviously facing west at the rear. You know, perhaps just develop that as a smaller unit, add a common laundry. That would be much more livable. Other comment on the plan, and I agree with Charles. You've made some improvements in bedrooms, but then some other things suffer. Like on the second level, the bathroom becomes tiny, and it, you know, gives up a tub space for a shower, and that's for a 3-bedroom unit, and it's jammed. And well, let's see, is it? I might be getting confused.
Second floor. Yeah.
Second floor.
It's sheet A3, right?
Yeah, it's where you're creating the corner bedroom where the kitchen was, and cutting back the bathroom.
Oh, that's you mean first floor?
The bathroom's the same size on that sheet.
Well, let's see.
Which sheet are you on? Are you on A2?
Sorry.
It's the first floor. This one becomes this one.
Where the bathroom,
Sorry, I lost my place there. Well, scratch that comment.
And also
I
on the
lost-
third floor here, that's a huge bathroom. It becomes that bathroom.
It was the third floor. Sorry, it was the third floor that I was referring to the bathroom being compressed.
In,
Is that number 5?
it's in the upper left corner, that's unit 5, yeah.
Another helpful thing would be to label the units. I found that to be a little difficult to figure out, well, what bedrooms are in which unit.
all right,
I'll
further,
make
is
a
there-
motion to continue this, and if the, with the suggestion that the applicant look a little bit more at the circulation patterns for the doorways, the bathroom sizes. We would like to see all the dimensions shown, and look at the livability in terms of the restroom, the bathrooms, maybe they can be a little bit bigger, if you can squeeze that in, and
So I just
but
want to,
anyway, so
while
those
while
would
we're
be things we
thinking of
could
that,
add to it.
this was originally a consent item that we've now spent almost an hour on, which is fine because we're improving the structure. But I do think with some of these relatively minor items, to the extent we can make changes and have staff bring them back, we need to move them along if we can. So if we have substantive changes that we can recommend tonight, I would like us to spend another 5 minutes and see if we can get that done. Because if we have all of these smaller projects coming back to us, we're just going to get inundated with the tidal wave of very small projects when we have some very big projects coming up that we'll need to spend many, many hours grappling with a lot of issues. So I don't want us to overly focus on small things when we in terms of our ability to work through the workload, we just need to keep that sort of balanced priorities. So what I've heard is that we need an on-site laundry. We need to remove the doors that face into the undersized side yard setback. Are there other things that...
One to the bedroom, you mean?
Yes.
The utility room is okay.
Are there other prescriptive changes that we can recommend be made now that gets folks comfortable with moving this along or not? And I'm okay either way. I just want to encourage us to try and come to closure if that's possible.
On the 3-bedroom unit, it needs a bath with a shower, not just a shower. On the 3-bedroom.
A tub and shower, you mean?
Yeah, tub and shower.
Which is that?
The lowest level.
First floor does have a...
Yeah, the basement level.
First floor is a tub. You think it should have a shower as well, Brazil? Is that what you're saying?
Separate shower?
If you have 3 bedrooms, you need a bathtub and a shower. If you have 2 bedrooms
Into
then
a
just
shower, right? Right now it's a shower. He's converted it from a bathtub shower to a shower.
So it could be a bathtub shower is what you're saying. Okay, so on that sheet A2, the bathroom above new bedroom 2, where it just shows a shower, would be a tub/shower. Okay? Other substantive changes?
That same idea would apply to level 3, sheet A4. That has a shower within the 3-bedroom unit, shower only. And that is the bath that was compressed from its previous full-size tub. So I would like to comment on the idea of adding prescriptive elements. I think this is a little too much for that. And I think several of these suggestions are really good. And again, I think it can go to improve the units. And I think there's a lot of potential here to make better units out of all these units, get a common laundry, and make a better overall building and still increase the bedroom count, but maybe not 13.
Okay. Carrie?
I agree with Patrick. I think that it needs to come back. In 14 years on design review, we never passed anything that had bedrooms that were smaller than 9 feet by 10. So hearing that a bedroom might be 7 feet, when I know it's going to end up with a bunk bed in it, makes me kind of nuts. And my point were the adding extra storage for the kitchens and that there not be doorways directly adjacent to those kitchens, which is the case in several places in this plan. You don't, if you're ill, you don't want to be directly off that kitchen and have your neighbors, no.
Okay, so I think whether we continue it or we direct them tonight, the more direction we provide, the more quickly we'll resolve this. So I think whichever way we decide to go, direction is a helpful thing to the applicant. Shoshana and then Leah.
Yeah, this has been stated lots, but since we're saying the official recommendations, we really need to see more accurate and detailed plans when this comes back. We need all the dimensions in there. We need there to we don't need it, you know, like, oh, well, this door doesn't really need to be there. Like, you need to actually, like, make it reflect the actual plans. And take a look at Ms. Stone's comment. She had a lot to say about inconsistencies in the plans, and I don't want to see any of that when it comes back.
Okay. Other comments?
Yeah, I guess a little bit echoing that, I think the concern I have is that we have so many tenants and so many community members concerned about the project, and I would just really encourage you to, have another community meeting, because I think that, taking into consideration the folks who are living there now, I think is really important. And we have seen some projects where that was one of the biggest concerns, was that people were really opposed, and that by reaching out, it really made a huge difference, and they came back with a better project, and everyone was a little more, I guess, kumbaya. But, and sometimes that's not possible, but I think that, it seems that could happen a little bit more, considering how many folks have been able to turn out on this.
So I'm going to presume that since the only motion we have is to continue, that that's the direction we're headed, and that the specific requests to come back with are clearly labeled, accurate, scaled plans, so we know how big things are. An on-site laundry in the ground floor level, remove doors that face to the exterior from the bedroom, add a 3-bedroom tub shower, windows a 3-bedroom condition, not just a shower, that the kitchens have more storage, that there be no doors adjacent to the kitchen.
I'm not sure what that means.
I'm not really sure what that means either. Carrie, can you give a little?
Where the door to the bedroom is right next to the kitchen.
Which one
Right
is
next
that?
to the
Second
wall
floor?
that is the kitchen.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's on the first floor, and you have the
So it's
doorway.
sheet
It's in two, they're two different
Bedroom
units
number
that have the
3.
same issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
I put
Okay,
my
good.
packet away, so.
All right.
Also, I'd like to take a poll. I mean, I am in support of the 13 bedrooms, and I think that that's really what the main request is. We're kind of focusing on the livability because of the number of bedrooms you're asking for. We're really focusing on the livability. So there's an implied I guess, acceptance of that. But I would like to get a poll from our board on that acceptance. I would not want the applicant to come back and then everyone says, oh no, we don't want 13 bedrooms. So I'm in favor of 13 bedrooms. So I just want to make that clear. And I would like the other board members to let us know where they feel on that so he can get clear direction.
So I think perhaps on that, it's hard to say how many bedrooms we think is appropriate until we see the dimensions.
Right.
So just in fairness, I think that personally, I'm not hearing any opposition to the notion of 13 bedrooms,
Well,
but perhaps
actually,
they're too small, and we need to see what the dimensions are.
I believe
I'm
her
opposed.
suggestion of bedrooms 9 by 10 feet, if that can be a condition, I think that would mitigate any concerns that we have if the bedrooms are 9 by 10
If
feet.
they're that big, then 13.
Then we don't need to discuss the number.
We don't typically, well, at least at the Zoning Adjustments Board, we haven't gotten into that level of detail. I appreciate design review may have with new construction. This is an old home with existing bedrooms. So I think, creating that as a new condition may not be appropriate. Let's just see what he has. And then we can make an assessment based on what's there that exists today and what he's changing.
Alternatively, I'd like to suggest that I don't think it's going to be possible for some of these to be literally, 9 by 10. It might be 8 by 11 or whatever. But that you sort of shoot for that as a goal. And if you can't make it, you're really clear why, when you come back. And we might be able to accept that.
Okay, so we missed, is that Patrick?
Just to continue. On the bedroom count, I think by the time you get tub showers instead of showers in 2 locations and get a common laundry room, and I don't think you're going to have 13 bedrooms. So I wouldn't encourage you to, try to make that happen. I would encourage you more to focus on the quality of the plan and adjacencies and all the issues we've discussed, and settle for 10, you know. I mean, that would still be a 50% increase. That's substantial.
Okay, so unless there's any urgent need to continue this discussion, I'd like to go ahead and vote on the continuance. Is that all right? Have we provided sufficient direction?
We need a second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions. This is continued for you to work out with staff a time to come back with the answers to the questions. Thank you very much. All right, with that, we're going to take a captioner's break, and then we will take up item 4, 1615, Martin Luther King. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for coming and bringing this stuff to our attention. All right, we're reconvening the meeting. We're going to take up item 1615, Martin Luther King. Folks will make their way in. Charles, Patrick, you ready?
Hint, hint, hint.
Come on down. All right. Staff report on 1615 Martin Luther King.
Yes, this is a use permit number 2014-0025, because it did arrive in 2014, to establish and install a new rooftop wireless telecommunications facility with 8 antennas concealed within a 10-foot enclosure screen atop an existing 4-story residential building, and to locate related equipment on the top of the 3rd story of the building. This is all proposed in the R2 district, and there are several use permits required to establish this project. There would be a use permit required for the wireless facility in a residential district, to build a rooftop wireless facility beyond the greatest height limit of the district, and to create a residential addition. The proposed facility consists primarily of 2 components, which is the wireless antennas on top of the 4th story. There's 8 total, 2 pointing in all 4 cardinal directions, and the rooftop equipment enclosure that could include a generator. It may or may not. There have been some revisions to the project to relocate the generator. And as we have begun to do with all of our wireless projects, we have a summary table on page 9 of the report that sort of explains how the project lines up with the checklist of requirements. And it meets many of them, however, it doesn't meet all of them, so I'll just quickly explain that. In terms of necessity, RF, radio frequency emissions, exposure levels, noise, carrier compliance for their other sites, in this case the carrier is Verizon, height projections, the project does meet the requirements. However, there are some requirements it doesn't meet. For example, staff finds that it isn't compliant with our standards with respect to minimizing its visual impacts. It does have the potential to impede parking, and it doesn't represent the least intrusive means of achieving the coverage goals of the applicant. And we have, for that reason, prepared and recommended denial of the project, and we've prepared those findings for you. And they go into some more detail about the impacts that we have assessed with respect to potential detriment. And those have to do with intensification of use of the property, a property that's already been developed beyond the parameters of the district, the potential parking violation, view obstruction from the penthouse unit at the top of the building, those visual impacts, again, related to bulk and massing, or those perceptions of bulk and massing, and its failure to represent itself as the least obtrusive means or intrusive means of achieving these goals. So the staff report is there, and I'm here to answer any questions. I do want to point out that the applicant has submitted a tolling extension. So the report says that the current tolling extension ends in May, and the applicants recently extended the agreement until June 16th, and they're going to talk to you a little bit more about why they'd like that to happen.
Okay. Questions of staff, or should we move into the applicant's presentation? Carrie.
Thank you so much. The staff report was really excellent. I've dealt with lots of cell installations over the years, but only one time that I can remember in residential, and that was new residential on College and Bancroft. So the noise regulations that you say exist, were those developed regardless of whether or not it's commercial or residential?
The noise study was done to demonstrate compliance with the city's community noise ordinance for the residential level standards.
And does the noise study include vibrations or just noise? Because noise can cause vibration.
It's an acoustic study, so I believe it's just noise, but I'd be happy to look through the record and confirm that before the end of the hearing.
It might be just something we need to look at in future as more residential.
Other questions of staff? Okay, let's go ahead and open the hearing. The first, I actually have the applicant here to speak. Did you submit a speaker card or? Did not. Okay, great. Why don't you come forward? You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good evening, members of the Berkeley Zoning Adjustments Board. My name is Maria Kim. I'm with Complete Wireless Consulting. I represent Verizon Wireless for the telecommunication facility proposed at 1615 Martin Luther King Way. Also here with me tonight is Paul Alberton, Verizon's outside legal counsel, as well as Bill Hammett of Hammett & Edison. Bill is an independent third-party radio frequency or RF engineer, and he will be able to answer any questions you may have about RF. Tonight we respectfully request a continuance to a future date. Verizon is in receipt of the staff report as of last week. We can address with more time the concerns that Berkeley Planning has voiced with this project. First, staff has stated that this project violates the parking ordinance. Verizon has now completely removed the generator. There is no generator at this location, and that is no longer an issue with this project. Secondly, we would like the opportunity to redesign this rooftop facility, and we believe that we can cut down on the height of the proposed antennas, as well as limit the mass of the equipment area. In order to do so, we request additional time, as well as the opportunity to be heard before the Design Review Committee to address the design issues at play. Lastly, we would like to take into consideration the comments from the public tonight. In particular, the tenant who lives on the roof, Mary Broderick, was unable to attend tonight's meeting. We would like to reach out, get access to the roof in order to provide either simulations or address the concerns she has about her view from the roof. Due to these 3 reasons, I respectfully request a continuance of this project to a ZAB hearing in September, October. Hopefully, we can bring forth a revised project that Berkeley, Verizon, and the public can support. And with that, I'd like to reserve the rest of my time for a response and rebuttal. Thank you very much.
Okay, are there questions of the applicant? When you say reserve your time,
just like
you have 3 minutes left. Are you not using it now? Well,
no, I can use it. I will call Paul Alberton.
Paul Alberton, outside counsel for Verizon Wireless. I don't know about offering time to a lawyer, but I'll be very, very brief. As you heard, this application was filed in 2014. We've shown, and your third-party engineer has confirmed, that we've got a significant gap in our coverage. So we need to fill this gap. This facility is going to go somewhere in this neighborhood. We did what we could to hide the facility from the public views, and we're somewhat surprised by the staff report, which is now looking at very sort of private views associated with the 4th floor tenant. We think we can deal with those. We've removed the generator, which is going to allow us to shrink the size and cut down the size of the facility and reduce the mass and bulk. We think we can do that, and we'd like an opportunity for you to do that. We also, the staff has asked us to dig deeper into an alternatives analysis. We'd be happy to do that too. We're sorry that the public comes and has to testify maybe more than once, but that's going to happen here or whether it goes on to council. So we'd like to do it here. We'd like to do it through the Design Review Committee and give us an opportunity to work with the comments we hear tonight, with the 2 community meetings that we've had, the 3 years. We're really trying to provide this a very important wireless service to the community. We know the gap is there and we need an opportunity to fill it. Invite your indulgence to allow us to continue this and bring back a better design. Thank you.
thank you. Any questions for the applicant? None. Okay, so then the first person to testify at the public hearing is Elena Auerbach, followed by Claire Beauvais.
Hello, thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I have been very involved in this for the past 2.5 years. I don't know why this has gone on for so long. It's kind of, remarkable. And there would everybody stand up who's here to oppose? This is a very small fraction of the neighbors who have been involved for the past, thank you very much, thank you, for the past 2.5 years in this. So it's been wonderful to galvanize the neighborhood, and we are all in solidarity against this. I have talked to wireless customers. There is no gap that I am aware of. That my sister-in-law is a Verizon customer. It's fine in our neighborhood. I'm 6 lots away. I'm a homeowner on Bonita. So I'm not sure about that. We are also 2.5 blocks away from a commercial area of Shattuck. This is, as was stated by staff, this is an intensification of an already non-conforming building. It's a quiet residential neighborhood that we live in with mostly single-family homes. There's a 3-story building that's catty-corner to the back garden of my house, and I am highly affected by the very, very bright lights that are on its open hallways. So these bright lights shine into my backyard from dusk until dawn, into my back porch, and even into my bedroom, which is at the back of the house. So it affects, and I'm sure whoever built this building had no idea what the effect was going to be on the neighbors and on the neighborhood. This is extremely irritating and harmful to me and my family and the people who come and visit us. So intensifying the use of this other building, which is a few lots to the north, is not the right thing to do. So I really urge you to act now. Don't waste any more of the staff time or your time or the neighbors' time to just support the staff's recommendation to deny. Thank you so much.
Claire Beauvais, followed by Cheryl Robertson.
My name is Claire Beauvais. I live at 1632 Bonita. I've lived there for 43 years, I hate to admit. In my view, the tower and the screen are completely out of scale with the neighborhood, and I'm dismayed that the applicant has not proposed other less intrusive alternatives. I'm dismayed also this process has gone on so long for us, and I urge the board to deny the request for a continuance.
Thank you. Cheryl Robertson.
Hi. I would just agree with everything Claire's just said. She's got me beat. We've only been here for 42 years, but it's a quiet neighborhood. And this is completely out of scale. It also is adding another 10 feet or so. Maybe it will be that the height will be mitigated, but frankly, if it hasn't been in 2.5 years, I'm skeptical. I don't see why it has to go on and on. Aside from being unsightly and out of character with the neighborhood, the added height gives me pause as an active member of our neighborhood disaster preparedness group. So we're putting another, even more height on top of a 4-story building, which is next to a preschool. I don't understand how that can be a guaranteed safe situation. So again, I would agree with everything Claire said and add that to it.
Thank you. John Donaldson, followed by Anne Marie Gianni.
I live 2 houses from the proposed tower at 1623 Martin Luther King Jr. Way. Verizon's a national company. They have considerable financial resources. We're just Berkeley citizens. They had 2.5 years to get this right, and they couldn't do it. I don't see why they should get more time to go on.
Thank you. Anne Marie Gianni, followed by Dr. Joshua A.R.
Hello. First, thank you for all you do. We do appreciate that. My name is Anne Marie. My husband and I live on Bonita with our 2 young kids, and we do also oppose this project. As Cheryl was saying about the seismic stability of the building, it's a 4-story building. I'm just confused why they would want to put it on a soft-structured 4-story building. They have a soft-structured garage on the bottom of it. So it's just very confusing for me, and I'm very, scared for my children because we walk around the block all the time. I like to take them on the urban hikes in the neighborhood, so I'm just concerned about that. I also am wondering, we've been asking for, since this has been brought to our attention, we've been asking if there has been other sites, other alternative sites that they had looked at. Again, like was said, that this we are very close to commercial areas, so why can't it be on a commercial building? And again, please act now. We've been fighting for this for so long and are tired, so please deny Verizon's request for an extension.
Thank you. Joshua Agar.
Yeah.
And then Yuko
Thank you for
Fukuyama.
having me here. I am a PhD in engineering. I've published many peer-reviewed papers on RF engineering. I've designed antennas, have worked in this space for a long time. That's one of my concerns, but not the most important concern. My most important concern has to do with this building being a soft story building. While it has been retrofit, that only requires up to 60% of modern standards. So we're proposing to put an additional construction on a building at sub-modern standards. And particularly the proposed plan calls for putting it in a non-ideal location, off the center of mass of the building, which would be particularly bad given how soft story collapse could happen in a seismic area. Also, I reviewed the RF report, and it was really deficient and very kind of lazy. And I looked at the other reports by these people, and they're comparable. And I just want to kind of explain why it's so deficient. So they provide this radiation pattern. It's two-dimensional, not a three-dimensional radiation pattern. And they proposed 8 antennas. So if you go back to your high school classes, you have this diffraction phenomenon that occurs when you have multiple RF or electromagnetic sources that can exist. And what happens is it happens to form much larger intensity. So this says if you have 2, you could get 8 times the intensity that is predicted. So they project that you can have 27% from just a single individual acting antenna. But actually, they can have regions, because of the diffraction, where you're over the FCC limit. And they haven't accounted for this and done the accurate analysis. So they really are kind of deficient. And this has happened through all their other reports. So I really advise the zoning board to really look into these RF reports and actually go through the same sort of rigor that they do, for instance, for that beautiful lighting study where they monitor how the light changes at the different times of day. The same sort of rigor is not applied in this realm.
Thank you. What's a question for you?
Hi, sir. Do you live in the neighborhood?
I'm in the building.
You are? Okay, I was wondering what your stake was.
I also kind of would like to quickly address some of their comments. So they mentioned that they're going to remove the generator. One of their main...
So actually, you ran out of time.
Yeah, sorry. You answered my question, and I appreciate it.
We don't
I have a question about
typically-
the generator.
We have a
Can you
question
answer
for
it?
you about the generator. Come on forward and answer our question.
Can you tell me about the generator?
So one of the reasons why they were originally proposing this issue this tower was for emergency preparedness. And without the generator, this doesn't help in any way. But the generator also can't exist on the building because it's a soft story building. So it's a problem that's impossible to solve. They also say there's a no coverage gap, but there is a that there's a coverage gap, but it's on the website.
Thank you very much for answering our question. Yuko Fukuyama, thank you. Would you come forward, followed by Lori Zmitt?
Hi, I asked the board to deny the use permit for this project, and it's one of the reasons is the applicant has had more than 2.5 years to work on this and has not managed to meet all of the requirements. Similar applications have been completed in 3 to 4 months. Why can't they meet all the requirements in 2.5 years? Because it's the wrong site. And the proposal makes no effort to mitigate the size, the bulk, and the intensive use of the already non-conforming building. The apartment building at 1615 MLK is already the tallest, the bulkiest, and the biggest building on the block. It does not fit our neighborhood, which is composed of mostly 2- and 3-story homes and small apartment buildings. The 1615 MLK building is directly visible from our house. The addition of the cell tower would make the building even bigger and bulkier and would block our view to the west. And it would make a bad situation even worse. And I was going to talk about the acoustic report that talked about the generator. It didn't meet it said that it met the Berkeley noise ordinance, but it didn't. It did so by ignoring the penthouse apartment and nighttime power outages. And so, and the proposal is intrusive and infringes upon the residents' privacy and comfort. And so, in short, the selection of the proposed site is fundamentally flawed. For this reason, I urge the Zoning Apartments Adjustments Board not to grant a continuance and to deny the use permit today.
Thank you. Lori Zimmett? Yes. Typically, we take the cards in the order we receive them, but given that you guys are the last ones here, sure. Bill Hammett, followed by Alex Jacobs and Nancy Mosen.
I think Bill is with the applicant team.
Are you with the applicant team? All right, so you're going to need to wait till the, are you with the applicant team?
I'm the independent expert that submitted the report in your file for
Okay,
the
so your
fire
time to
exposure.
address us was during the applicant's 5-minute opening statement. So if there are questions, we'll ask them of you.
Lovely,
Thanks.
thank you.
Alex Jacobs, followed by Nancy Mosen. You're not going to speak? Alex Jacobs? Okay, Nancy Mosen. Sorry, Nancy, you can't assign your time to him. This is your time.
I've lived in the building for 22 years, and I agree with everyone here who said that they think this is the wrong site for the tower. There are excessive, wait a minute. The access issue is one of the problems, because the elevator in this building only goes to the 3rd floor. From what I understand, they have to get up on the roof in order to deal with that tower. So how are they going to do that? Are they going to take the stairs up the back? That's one thing. Another thing, that roof is not good. I've lived in that building for years, far before the current landlord. And when they fixed the roof, which was several years ago, they didn't take out the plywood that was up there, and it's rotten. Mary took photos of it, which I have pictures of here, and they want to put this tower up there on that. And there's also electrical issues in that building that have never been addressed. It just seems like this is the wrong place to put a cell phone tower. Also, another thing that concerns me is that the current landlord did deal with the earthquake issue by doing the retrofit. However, it is still a problem. Earthquakes are an issue. You put a cell tower on top of a building, which is already a soft-story building, it just seems like you're adding insult to injury. Isn't there a better site for this place, for this thing? I mean, why do we have to have it on our building? And the building was built in the 1960s, and apparently the original landlord told Mary that it was built very quickly and with the cheapest materials that they could find. And to put a thing of this size, however large it is, even after they modify it, on a poorly and cheaply designed building, it just seems ridiculous. I don't know. It seems like there should be a better way to approach this. That's about all I have to say, because I think everyone else has covered everything.
Thank you. Karina Jaffe, followed by Lori Zimmett, who now you get to be last.
Hello, my name is Karina Jaffe, and I'm a resident of 1615 MLK, where I live with my partner and my 15-month-old baby. They couldn't stay because the meeting went on very long, but the proposed project would be directly above our unit. So I have many concerns with this, and I'll try to mention some of them. When I was looking at this apartment in December of 2013, the property owner told me that he planned to turn the rooftop into a deck area that would be a common space for all the tenants. That was one of the reasons I decided to move in there, and thinking, great, is a small apartment, we'll have this open space. 9 months later, he submitted plans to the city to lease the rooftop to Verizon. I understand a landlord's need to make a profit, I really do, but a cell phone tower with 8 antennas within feet of people's homes, where they would be potentially up to 24 hours a day, is just not a suitable project for the site. This is a soft-story building, as you've already heard, and additionally, we'll be quick. So another thing I wanted to mention, that this is a project that's being done by a landlord who has a very poor track record. For example, the landlord does not currently have a property manager on site, despite having more than 16 units there, which is a violation of state law. In addition, my complaints about a squishy balcony that we had went unanswered for several months. It was only when 6 people died in the Berkeley balcony collapse, that the city ordered property owners to inspect all the balconies, that the work actually started. And finally, I want to remind you that the guidelines that say that there's no known danger to human health are 20 years old and have never been evaluated for 24-hour-a-day exposure. Please vote to deny this project today. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori Zimmett.
Lori Zimmett, I see you again. I saw you 2 weeks ago when we thought it was scheduled 2 weeks ago. I cut short a European trip with my daughter to come back for that one. Part of the scheduling problem, why Mary can't be here tonight, why this can't go on. I said at that time, for the folks who weren't there, that this is a common sense decision. This should be one of the easier decisions for the board. This one, you don't want to set precedent with. Not this one, with all of the things that you've read. So I'm going to leave you with one phrase: due diligence. Due diligence. The apartment residents, they've done due diligence since 2014. Due diligence. They've come together. They've worked. We're all people. We're not paid consultants who are working full time to get as many of these cell towers in our communities so they can say they have more cell towers and they have more coverage. It's endless. They will not regulate themselves. But this place, no. This one is where it's got to draw the line. We've done due diligence. The apartment people have done it. As a neighbor, owning my house, and the neighbors who are renters, we've all done due diligence. You've got the papers. I have to say, you know, your staff has done due diligence since 2014. They've done inspections into this building. They've come on site to firsthand take a look at this thing, and they unequivocally say to you what? Come on, no! This is not the one! This is not, I'm sorry down there, this is not the one! So now, ZAB members, you are sitting with how many? 183 emails at you? Probably by now over 200, would you say? And I know you've read them all, each of you. Yeah? And you've looked at reports, and you've looked at the data. And the bottom line is you also have done the due diligence. The only party here who hasn't done due diligence is who? Verizon. And you know what? I don't call it due diligence. I call it delay diligence. Delay diligence. So we'll tire, so we won't do it. So they'll come back to you again for what? They don't have anything more. Thank you. Please vote against their application. Please do not give them more time for more of this. Thank you for your attention to this.
All right, back to the ZAB. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Carrie.
I'd like to make a motion.
Please do.
I'd like to adopt the findings for denial that the staff has given us.
Is there a second?
And I will second that gladly.
So it's been moved and...
I don't want a continuance. I want to deny this because I don't think this should be on this residential building.
Am I wrong that we get
I think you need to
rebuttal?
move this tower.
So we have a motion. It's been seconded. Would you like to give us additional rebuttal to the testimony that was made before we continue the discussion?
Yes, thank you. We do get 3 minutes of rebuttal, I think. The years that have been spent on this project have not been as a result of delay or lack of due diligence by Verizon Wireless, I have to say. We didn't request the continuance a couple weeks ago. It was a notice issue. This is the first time it's before this board. And as I mentioned, we have a significant gap that needs to be filled. Why would you go on a 4-story building? Because it's the tallest location and we can put the smallest structure on top to get the antenna height that we need. We're trying to fit into the community as best we can. Yes, there's battery backup and it will continue during an emergency. Part of the continuance was we did outreach last summer and only 3 people came up, so we continued and we extended in order to outreach again last October when 20 people showed up. So we've been trying to meet with the community. We've been trying. This is the first time we've heard about bulk and height and intensity and views from the 4th floor, and that this would be a residential structure. If you look at the photo simulations that are provided to you, you can see that from the street it's barely visible. This won't be the end of the story. I'm sorry to say that we will be back here. We'll be back here with this project, but it may not be before you. We ask that you allow this project to go through the process, through the design review committee if necessary, which hasn't been requested before, and then through you, and then up to the council, and it's necessary after that. But Verizon Wireless is in a position where it needs to provide this service to your community. We have the demand for this service is doubling every year. We have multiple facilities proposed in Berkeley, and we're trying to put them in the best locations. Please give us an opportunity to do that here. I understand the emotion that you're hearing from the immediate residents. We always have that same problem, and it's always because of a fear of RF emissions. We have Bill Hammett here to explain that to you, that we're well below those requirements, and we believe that we can provide here an inconspicuous facility to provide this vital service. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for the applicant.
Teresa.
Did the applicant, what other locations did the applicant study in this area?
There were, as I'm aware, there were only 2 other locations that were studied because we weren't at the time.
Where are those listed?
As this was going through the process, we were not, as I understand it, directed away from this location by staff.
We looked at the church located on Virginia Street, and it ended up falling through due to during the negotiations process. We also looked at the 4 commercial properties that are located on the corners of Virginia and Martin Luther King, and unfortunately those commercial buildings are 1.5 stories tall, and much shorter than anything else in that area.
And why do you need to put something in this area? You said that you need to provide a service to this area. Why do you need to provide this service in this particular neighborhood?
The demand is there. We have 5 parameters that we look at to determine the amount of the volume of services being requested. We looked at the forward data value, that's the amount of data that's being put through by the adjacent facilities, and we look at the number of times that phones are asking, phones, tablets, whatever they are, is requesting that kind of information. And the information that we have shows that our network that is serving this area right now is overloaded, and we're unable to provide the service to that area. And your third-party engineer reviewed our materials and confirmed that. So the city has evidence on the record that there is a gap. And under federal law, if we show a gap and we show this is the least intrusive means of filling that gap, then you're actually compelled to approve it. Now, we'd like to come up with a product that is a design that is acceptable, or an alternative. We're willing to go back and re-scrub those alternatives.
So
But our goal really is to provide service. It's not to traumatize the community.
So if fewer people start, if there's fewer people using Verizon, does that mean that there'd be less need and you wouldn't need another tower?
That's right. If you're asking the famous Pogo question, who is the enemy? The enemy is us. It's because of the demand that we're getting from people who are living in the area, through the people who are passing through the area. And 48% of households don't have a wireline phone anymore. They're relying on wireless services. The average household has 13 wireless connected devices in it in the United States, and the demand is doubling every year for wireless services. And that's what all of the carriers are facing, is this incredible demand to provide everything from insulin pumps that relate directly to a hospital to warn of a dangerous situation, to people talking on the phone, to your UPS guy signing off your name.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had another
Teresa
question.
Clark.
Did you do a structural analysis of the building and the weight of the equipment? Where is that? What page is on that?
It is currently underway.
Okay, so you haven't done that yet.
Because we're changing the design, it is no.
Okay.
We have
Did you
to
do
change
it for the
parameters
other
of that.
design?
Excuse me?
Had you done it for the previous design?
We were working on it for the
Okay.
previous design.
And has the building complied with the soft story ordinance, the Berkeley staff?
I can't confirm, but I think the property owner's in the room. Maybe he can confirm.
Building was retrofit.
Has it complied with, I know, but, yeah, has it complied with the current ordinance? Yeah, I'd like to know that before.
I can't confirm tonight.
Carrie.
Since I've done design review for so long, I've done design review on so many cell installations in this area. The building I used to work in at Rose and Shattuck has cell towers. The many buildings on the corner of Cedar and Shattuck have cell towers. I mean, this is moving down now westward into the flats where there just aren't very many tall buildings. So that's why this is so important for us to understand. I've never seen an installation like this with 8 towers and a fence around it. Usually the towers are made to be inconspicuous and they hang off the eave. You know, this is like taking away someone's view and not considering it. Anyhow, I just want to point out that the findings for denial don't include anything about radioactivity or, you know, these are really very well thought out reasons why this is just not the right place for this project. They can't. They can't deny for radioactivity. This has nothing to do with that. These to me, and all my experience doing these installations, are really important to have for this building. And I just have to say, for those of you who know, Martha Nikoloff, the soft story buildings in Berkeley created the Neighborhood Preservation Ordinance, which stopped big height from happening in residential areas, and certainly wouldn't ever have anticipated anything like this, or it would have been in the ordinance. And I hope that as this moves forward, and by the way, I have Verizon, and I live 3 blocks away, and I've never had any issue. And in fact, 2.5 years ago, when you put in this application, I switched to Verizon because AT&T was so horrible, and I did a little dance because the reception was so good. It's always been good, so I don't, you know.
I'd like to suggest again the original motion to deny this project.
We have a motion. We can call the question on the motion, or unless there's any further debate.
Thank you.
Okay, calling. Shoshana has one additional statement.
I just don't, the main issue, one of the main issues brought up in the staff report is that it's an intensification of use on an already overburdened property. And I don't think, I didn't hear anything in their proposed changes that would address that. So that's why
I don't think it should be on this building. Exactly.
All right. So with that final comment, which I concur wholeheartedly with, we've approved a number of Verizon facilities, as you know, and we've struggled through the design issues, as you know. And this is an example where we think you've got a building that is extremely non-conforming, and the other issues that have been raised in the record are why we are going to, I believe, unanimously recommend the denial. That's the sense of the board I'm getting now, although we'll vote, and then we'll let you know for sure. So with that, would you please take a roll call vote?
Absolutely. Board Member O'Keefe?
Yes.
Board Member Olson?
Yes.
Board Member Sheehan?
Yes.
Board Member Khan?
Yes.
Board Member Solosky?
Yes.
Board Member Brazil Clark?
Yes.
Board Member Teresa Clark?
I actually wanted to talk more, but I'll just say yes, because I want to go to bed. But I do want, I think this is going to probably go to the council as an appeal by the applicant or something. And I really do think the applicant needs to deal with the structural issues of the existing building. I think that's a big problem. And, yeah, I'll say I agree, yes.
Thank you.
Board Member Simon Weisberg?
Yes.
That is to deny. The motion is to deny. Yeah.
And Vice Chair Peterson?
So the motion has been denied. As you know, it's appealable, and even if you should choose to appeal, we strongly recommend that you address the substantive issues raised in the staff report by the community and by the Zoning Adjustments Board before you take this to council, because I imagine you're going to hear these same issues again. Thank you, and thanks everybody for coming. That concludes the ZAB meeting unless there's any other business tonight. All right, so we are now adjourned.